terrified.
Hello there and
Recording.
welcome. Yes, Miles, we're on. We've
We're on.
started. We're on. Yes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this video. I have another very special guest with me, Mr. Miles BOULD. Now, Mr. Miles BOULD may not be that well known to you, but you will have heard him many a time because what you're looking at is one of the great session percussionists and drummers who's played with absolutely bloody everyone. Give us a few names, Miles, who you've played with. Go on.
Oh, that's putting me on the spot.
No, I mean, you must remember somebody.
Yeah.
Tina Turner.
Tina Turner. That was a session. That was a studio session.
That's good enough. If
Billy,
I'd have
Billy,
had a studio session with Tina Turner, I'd have been boasting about it.
Billy Ocean. I toured with a lot who I
The best of
absolutely
the oceans.
the best of the ocean. Sting with Dominic. You know, my mate Dom. A lot
Yeah.
of time Sting with Dom. Yeah, Robert Palmer when I was very young, when I was about 17, 18. So that was like my break into
Is there any tunes that people might have heard on the radio, perhaps, as they go and pick the kids at school that you played on?
probably one of the prominent ones that the kids was I did a Beyonce track. I suppose that's a fairly big thing to do, which was Green Light. I did the percussion on that.
See what I'm
In
saying?
in
And you see, the thing is with session musicians. See, I could never be a
with a very good
session
friend of mine playing
musician.
drums, by the way. Yeah.
Who's playing drums on that?
So what is wrong with my brain?
Come on, Miles, we're under pressure now.
Yeah,
We're
we're under pressure
recording
now.
now. I need
Give me
this information.
oh, for God's sake.
Viewers, go and Google it.
Jack
What?
Pollitt. That's it, Jack Pollitt. I brought him in on the session. Yeah, great drummer, by the way. Check him out.
And these are the musicians that do the actual work. This is the great breed of the session musicians that turn up. They're not in it for their ego. They don't want to be front stage. They just want to get up, do the gig, deliver what the artist wants, and that's what you've done all your life, isn't it, Miles? You're a session player, and ostensibly we were going to chat about the session world, which has diminished over the years.
Yeah.
And from my point of view as a teacher, I often get approached by kids and they say, "Oh, can I have drum lessons?" Yeah, and then I sit down. What do you want to do? I want to be a session player, and I'm like, well, what do you mean by session player? It's like there's about 5 people that got those gigs in the UK, or at least that's what it seemed like to me when I was coming up. But as we just started chatting, I've become very interested in Miles's dad. I'm not interested in him anymore. He might be sat there in front of his vast array of percussion instruments, but I don't care about that. So can you tell us who your dad was?
Right. So Peter Bould. I've talked about him before, funnily enough, in an interview. And I guess he's a huge reason why I do what I do for various reasons. But he was a jack of all. But one of the things his main passion was jazz, and he got into production, producing records. And he grew up in and around the Ronnie Scott's world, specifically Tubby Hayes, Stan Tracy, Ronnie, and all those guys, particularly Tubby, I think. And this is one of those. I watched the thing with Simon.
Yeah, the Simon Phillips interview. Yeah,
and there's all these sort of stories, and you go, well, that's as legend has it, or it's been passed down to me. As I understood it, at some point in my father's life, he lived at Tubby Hayes's house because my father had a bit of a shady background, was left alone. Well, yeah, another story for another time. But his passion was jazz. Worked in Ray's Jazz Shop. Started Mold Jazz, or was part of the Mold Jazz scene down in King's Cross. All those guys. I mean, I'm condensing it now quickly, but yeah, he went and recorded Tubby back in the day. I'm trying to remember the name of the label that the guy who approached me. If I look it up on my phone, I'll probably find it. But I can.
Yeah, that honestly,
that later.
I've got guys watching this that will know everything about the British jazz scene.
Right.
So they will be. This is
They'll
why
know,
we
yeah.
do it. This is why we've got to get in the nooks of crannies. Because for
Yeah.
those of you that maybe aren't British or don't know about the British jazz scene, Tubby Hayes is like possibly in that period between 1950 and 1970. He's possibly the most important British jazz musician. And he was heralded, wasn't he? And he actually went to the States, Tubby did, and he impressed everybody, but it just didn't quite happen for him
Yeah.
when he went. But I think then, of course, with most of the great musicians, he died relatively young in the early 70s. I think of a heart attack. Was it because
Thinking
of the drink? Was it?
probably, drinking, smoking, hard life. He was
Yeah.
an incredible vibes player as well. I mean, he was just
No,
an unbelievable rounded musician. Yeah, yeah,
goes. It is an incredible play. I grew up with those albums, so I'm going to scurry downstairs after this interview and pick out my Ronnie Scott and Tubby Hayes albums
yeah.
and see if your dad's on there as a producer. Was he? Did he used to?
Yeah, so there's several, but there was this. He did a lot with Stan. In fact, that was the album I was going to bring up because I mean, the one I want to talk about is Under Milk Wood, but I can't find it. But there was several versions of Under Milk Wood, but there was this session that my father did. I think somewhere there, if you can see it, I can't see it myself. Peter Bould, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he did a lot of albums with Stan.
You
Um,
know what's bizarre? You know what's well, this is how we went into this conversation. I've done a number of interviews this week, and one of the interviews I did was with Martin Speak, and I was talking about the very specific Englishness of the great British or English jazz musicians. I said that the ones that are really good have this English quality. And rather than saying Stan Tracy, because I'm old and useless, I said Clark Terry. So I'm sat there, it's all in the interview when it comes out, and I'm going, well, Clark Terry had a very English sound. And because Martin's being polite, he's going, yeah, well, I can't really hear that because what I'd done is gone Stan Tracy, Clark Tracy, Clark Terry. That in my brain, that's how
that's
it
what.
was. Yeah, you see. So I'd say, anyway, but I was trying to.
Yeah,
I was. He was going, "What do you mean?" And I was going, "Well, there's that bloody album that Stan Tracy did, wasn't it? The really Englishy one, and it's actually Welsh because it's Under Milk Wood, which is one of the great albums of the British jazz scene. So all these things. It's weird how these things buzz around. Did
yeah.
he do anything like with Kenny Wheeler or any of those types? Because it seems around about the similar era. It's 60s, isn't it, rather
Yeah,
than 50s?
maybe. I mean, there was he did he do some stuff with again, I'll have to fact check that.
Well, you see,
He
the
does
reason I
these
ask
things,
is
but
because being such a huge John McLaughlin fan, which I
yeah,
am,
yeah.
before John went and played with Miles, he played on a number of albums in the on the UK jazz scene. They're very interesting. One's called Windmill Tiller by Kenny Wheeler. The other one's it experiments with pops, which is by Gordon Beck, and they're classic albums. So I'm very interested in that British jazz scene at that time because you can see how it's feeding into the emerging rock scene at that time. And so,
Mm,
is your dad still
mm.
around?
No, no, he
Oh,
died.
it's a shame when they go, isn't it?
Oh,
Because you
yeah,
just
he would have been fascinating to talk to. He was great. I mean, he was very comfortable with interviews, very comfortable speaking, but kind of a larger than life figure behind the curtain, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? He was just quietly sort of doing his thing. But yeah, it's funny actually. I realized because I was a kid when this was all happening, but I had these amazing experiences like being under a piano in the piano that they knocked. So in my house, my dad turned it into a studio, which sort of, then followed my mentality and the whole remote session sort of, most musicians, I'll build a studio in the bathroom if I have to make music. That's what I've got to do. My
mm,
dad was very much the same. So we did several records. There was a Stan record, I think, done in the middle flat in our house. They knocked a wall down to get the piano in so they could do it. And I remember sitting under the piano listening to Stan play. And also, remember a bass player, was he a bass player originally or piano player? Colin Purbrook, that name, a lot of jazz guys will know. Funnily enough, he lived across the road from us for many, many years. He was a really sweet guy, got into TV and film music, but he was a pretty hefty piano
mm,
player, if I remember. And also, I'm pretty sure he was a bass player, if I've got that right. I hope I've got that right. Again, I was so young and small. So what I was going to
mm.
say, what's kind of funny is I had all these amazing experiences, all these British jazzers and American jazzers. Gil Evans used to come to the house, people like that. It's just
No
insane.
way.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, but a
And you were
kid,
quite young then, so you couldn't really gauge what Gil Evans was like, could you? Is he just an
I
old
did
bloke to
actually. Well,
you?
I got to spend time with him, but initially, yeah, I'm like, whoever this guy is. Anyway, I'm off to play football or whatever it was I was doing. But he was a total sweetheart. But I mean, they used to give up my bedroom for Gil to stay in the house, and I'd sleep downstairs in the front room, things like that. Of course, I didn't mind, but I didn't really care. I'm off out playing with my mates. But over the years, obviously, the value of that, the experience talking to these people, and as they started seeing that I obviously had a serious interest in playing music, then it all the dots started to join. The funny thing was, is my father being from a very traditional recording, live kind of, you do it live. I'm growing up in the recorded music world and then getting into the session world from about the age of probably my first sort of grown-up session, was about 15, 16, far too young, didn't have a
Mm.
clue what I was doing, but there I was. Come back to my dad and go, check this out. And he's like, well, how was it done? I'm like, I don't know, we were all in the room, we did play a bit, but then I overdubbed this. He's like, oh, right, so yeah, okay. You know how records it used to be. And we were a
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
at loggerheads over many, many years because he's like, it's this way. But I'm like, yeah, but it's that music, you
Yeah,
know.
my
And
dad was right. Your dad was
he
right.
was, you know what? Of course
Totally right.
he was
And it
right.
and if everyone had
But
held
I'm
their
going to fight that,
position,
aren't I? You
yeah, of course you are. Of course you are. It's very interesting because the thing you're
know.
describing is the beginning of the demise of your job. Is taking the job, away from the session
Sorry,
players
man.
because,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like in the 1970s. Simon Phillips told me this. In the 1970s, if you were a singer-songwriter and you wanted to demo your songs, you would have to hire a session drummer, even though there's no label. And so it created session drummers that were working at very low money that would turn up to a studio just to play on these demos. And then if the
Yeah.
demos went somewhere, they then moved up, and so there was a whole range of different recordings plus jingles. Every type of music needed a drummer on. And of course, as the technology emerges, each of these little jobs has moved away. And now we're in a situation, I think, where drums are seen as a decorative instrument in the same way as you might hire a harpist or.
That's what those are. The conga, that 9 times out of 10, decorative,
Yeah.
enhancement to the visuals. And it
So
was really
so
hard for
you
me
you
to
you're a
make.
very good drummer and percussionist. I've watched you playing drums more than percussion. You're a very, very good drummer.
Oh,
And
thank
but
you very much.
how did you end up
Coming
doing
from you,
both?
that's a compliment, huh?
How did you end up doing both? How did you end up playing the old percussion?
Percussion.
Which
Um,
which one came first?
Percussion came first. So I was playing. My dad said, right, I think you were talking about Artie Shaw and and Woody Hermans and all of these people. My dad was like, my one of my older brothers, Martin, who sadly passed away not that long ago, was an alto player, a fantastic alto player. My dad sort of had great expectations for him. Um, Cat.
That was a rabbit, by the way. He's got
Rabbit.
rabbits in that
Or is it a
house.
rabbit? Maybe it is.
I know it's a cat, really, but to us viewers, it looks like you've got a rabbit running
Yeah.
around. And
Rabbit,
I'd
rabbit.
rather think it's a rabbit that you've got running around in there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's kind of
It
cool.
gives it a spring feel. We're all sat here in the depths of the winter, we're waiting for it, and then see those little bunny rabbits running
Yeah.
around.
Yeah. Yes. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So yeah, anyway, my dad stuck a clarinet in my gob and said, right, learn that, because he knew I was into music.
Yeah.
And obviously I've got Count Basie, Sinatra, the Beatles, Zappa, whatever,
Mm.
everything, Weather Report coming at me. And I'm like, oh yeah, and I'm obviously getting into it, but I'm also listening to, I mean, I was the weird kid at school. I'd take in Stan Tracy albums and go, they go, the school, what does your dad do? Or what music do you like? And everyone's listening to, I don't know, what would it have been, ABBA and Basic Rollers and very English kind of, in terms of what the English kids were listening to.
Mm.
And I kind of clocked that stuff, but I was sort of picking up on punk and I was picking up on
Mm.
other areas. But then I'd bring in like Tubular Bells, or I'd bring in Weather Report, or I'd bring in Zappa, or I'd bring in, all these weird albums.
Mm.
Go, my teachers were like, "Oh, this is cool," like what's that all about? But I was definitely seen as a bit of the oddball kind of, um, yeah, bringing albums like that in. But what was my point? Where was I going with
So
that?
you brought up on all this music, and then you
Grew up
got
on
a
this, all
clarinet.
this,
Yeah.
yeah, and
So how did you get into the percussion?
so percussion wise, I was listening to the record. I was playing the clarinet, and I was hitting it more than I was blowing it. Basically, I was just constantly tapping and tapping to the grooves of the records I was listening to, and and then I was like, okay, maybe I'll play the sax. So I kind of like that. I prefer the sound of that. But I know the road to a good road apparently to a saxophone is to go through the clarinet. It's just good for your embouchure, as I understand it. But hence my dad tried to do it the proper way. But what I do the opposite. I do completely the opposite. Start beating it,
Mm.
and it's like, and I'm listening to these certain records, and Weather Report being a huge influence, dialing into the little things that are happening in the background. And then the passion grew. Then I got a little sort of set of beaten up old bongos or something. I had a tambourine around. At school, I was kind of always the one going over to the drum department that was nothing a triangle, but I'd be trying to play it. That sort of, yeah. And then the interest grew. I mean, uh, yeah, listening to reggae, a lot of reggae, and listening to the percussion of the reggae, loving the little way in which that spoke to me. everything. Art Blakey stuff when he had like, conga players with him, anything that had percussion. I'm like, what's that thing that is making this move differently? And it's not the drums, much as I love the drums too. What's the thing? What's the little magic fairy dust or groove element that's, and I was absolutely starved of it. I mean, I was playing the clarinet and the sax still a little bit, but all I was doing was trying to play, they were trying to take me down the slightly, do the classical route, do all of do it all as you're meant to do it. And I was like, I want to play Miles Davis. I want to play Kind of Blue, or I want to play whatever. And the guys go, you can't, you don't know. We have to go back to basics. And I'm still trying, And then I ended up playing the melodies of those things on anything I could. I've tried and play the melody of a Miles Davis record, ironically, on pots and pans and bits of percussion. So I don't know what that was about, but there you go.
And it's very strange how musicians don't just have they're not just drawn to music, they're drawn to very specific things. And a percussionist is a percussionist, and they're drawn, they're different to a drummer.
Yeah,
I've
in some
noticed
ways,
that. Yeah, because it's like they seem to get turned on a lot more by color, and it's like it's not just about rhythms with percussion, isn't it? Because you have whistles and
chimes and
chimes and all that type of
yeah,
stuff. Yeah, there is
trying
a
to
magic.
elevate
There's a magic
sections.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And it is absolutely as ludicrous as anything goes. And that's the kind of beauty of percussion. I mean, literally anything you pick up, if there's a way to make it sound like something, you could maybe use it in a context. And every once in a while, that happens to me. I'm doing a session and I'm like, they want something weird. What have I got around the house that might be able to record it in a certain way, get a bit of do something with it too. So there's a sort of alchemy, mad professor in the corner trying to come up with a new formula kind of thing. I mean, there's your standard sounds, but yeah, there's a very different dance between percussion and drums. And so to answer your question, moving on, otherwise I could talk about this for hours, is kind of a few friends, a few artists that I was working with in my sort of late teens, coming into my early 20s. More and more, they're like, do you play drums? I'm like, I mean, I was kind of like playing and messing around, and I do certain things, bits and pieces, but I never really put myself out there as a drummer. But a lot of there's a few angles to this, but a lot of the singer-songwriters I was working with, they would often want me to play something that sounded like drums on percussion. And all the percussionists out there will know exactly what I'm talking about, who know this, where you go, okay, so basically you want me to play boom, boom, chap, budum, budum, chap, or whatever but just not with a snare, a kick, and a hat. You don't want that, and you don't want that bombastic, loud drummer smashing away at the drums. Much as we love that, for certain things, it needs to be a softer approach. But what they know rhythmically is kind of what a drummer would be doing. I'm sitting there going, well, there might be another way to do that. There might be a way in which we can. I would always try and invent parts that weren't just your standard drum part on a cajon or on a set of congas. I try to voice it differently, shaker, cowbell, tambourine on the hand, create a different shape, but give them a backbeat. I'm not going too far down a rabbit hole here, but then it was like, well, if I played drums, what will I do? Now, I clearly, like many percussionists do, they come to the drum kit and we play it a little bit back to front. And I very quickly learned that. And I thought, I can't be too out there with the drums. I can't be playing on all the offbeats. I need to sort of lay it down. And I got Dominic actually to thank for this, because he pushed me to playing drums. He's like, dude, you're a drummer at heart as well. It's in there. And if you do that, you've added a string to your bow. The reason I say all that is to sort of tie in the whole session thing. I realized quite quickly, if I do just percussion, it's generally seen, sad as it is, in commercial English music, predominantly, which is what I was dealing with initially, although I wanted to be a jazz musician, as a added extra. It's like having brass, backing vocals, percussion, because the meat and potatoes of most pop gigs, on average, were drums, bass, guitar, keyboards, vocalist, two guitars, two keyboards, as you know. And so I a little bit had to fight to sort of involve myself and be seen present, worthy. It brings something to the table. And I thought, well, if I can get my drum chops up, I've given myself both options. And actually, just out of learning and fascination, I wanted to know what it's like on the other side of the bar, if that's a good way to put it, like how important it is. And respect for drummers. Like, I'm working as a percussionist with the drummer. What are they hearing? What are they feeling? What's their job? What's their role? And I would definitely say this, as a drummer, your responsibility is greater than a percussionist, unless you're maybe in a Latin band. I don't want to offend anyone with that. But the truth is, I can hang off a drummer. A good drummer, I can hang off them. I can work with them. I can hands off. I can change the color, I can move around the instrument and play something else. And if you really respect that job, it's just as difficult to do it well, but you're hanging off the drummer. But I think that's a good place to be. But as I say, I kind of wanted to know what the drummer was doing. I'm pointing that way because there's a drum kit there, by the
Yeah,
way.
so I like the way you've done that. Yeah.
Percussion there, drums.
It's fascinating because it's me being a drummer. At one point, when I got endorsed to Meinl in the early days, and
Mhm.
because Meinl did percussion, I started to grab percussion because I was back then. See,
Rabbit.
it was a pussycat. Everybody, um,
I went with rabbit.
uh, I started to grab bits of percussion, but that was because at the time, even though I was doing a lot of prog stuff and drum clinics, a lot of the work I was doing was songwriter based, and all they wanted exactly was that backbone. And so I knew I was only going boom, clack, boom, clack. They didn't even want the two bass drums on the second half of the bar. They just want,
Oh,
that type of singer-songwriter thing.
oh yeah, steady.
They just want boom, rim click, boom. So I would like grab a shaker, and I realized if I had a shaker for the one song, then the songwriter, I go, how about this? And I do shaker, then kick, boom. And then I'd have a different type of shaker,
Yeah.
I found that I could play the same beat but change the color of it. So I ended up with full set of congas, which is four congas. I've still got my full timbali set. I had a set of chromatic cowbells. I had every shaker going. I had a
Wow.
full percussion set. But the thing I found was I could never play them with my hands because I was a drummer and I tried to, but I just couldn't do it. So a lot of the times when I was playing congas, I would mute it with my hands, but I'd play it with some brushes so that I can get some sort of
Yeah.
drummy things on it, or I'd play it with beaters. And the last time I played percussion was I was in a band with Quill, and it had two drummers. It had me and Bev Bevan from ELO. He was the other drummer, and
Wow.
he played a big percussion setup, and I played the drums, but we would swap over. And then I would play percussion when he was playing the drums, and it was funny going back to it because again, I tried to play it with my hands. It's just impossible. I just had no projection. It was too quiet. I had to, so there is always a thing. If you're a drummer, you sort of end up without trying going into that area, or you're at a session. Someone's, oh, do you want to put a shake? We got a shaker in the studio. You're the drummer. You put it. Like, well, what have I got to do it for?
Yeah, no, it's an absolute classic tale I've heard a million times. And I think, yeah, the percussionist advantage is that you've worked on these know what congas are. So
Yeah,
and that's a completely different technique. There's obviously a lot of the same rudiments you can involve, all the paradiddles and
yeah.
doubles and all that we're all kind of blending. So it's a useful skill. But of course, your advantage was you were working on your feet. I'd only really worked by the one or the other when I was very young. I'd barely, because like
Yeah.
even cowbells it hasn't been around that long. Hi-hats have, but not foot cowbells or tambourines or
No.
cabasses, all the things you got now. But the first thing that was apparent to me is, oh, my feet are just nowhere. So I had to play serious catch up, as a drummer. But I kind of just went back to basics and went sit there for whenever I'm going to practice. If one thing I'm going to do is for 20 minutes, I'm going to play Beat It or whatever.
Mm.
But initially it was going, I mean, not that bad, but you know what I mean? I was all over the shop. And I started realizing it. And of course, in the studio, you're under the microscope, you offer up drums like any other instrument. You might be your second instrument and you go, yeah, I can do that. Make sure you can, like if you brought a sampler, make sure you know how to use it. Anything you bring to the studio, be proficient enough because very quickly, microscope would come out. I mean, I think with technology now, we all know that there's so many amazing tools that can kind of just sort the best of the best out. It doesn't matter how good you are. I've played on records with incredible drummers, and I've asked, I go, God, that's blinding performance. Yeah, well, we moved it back. I'm sure they didn't need to, but everyone does. Doesn't matter who you are. I mean,
We're getting into all this. I think
well,
before
we
we
could get
get to
into
all
this.
this
Yeah,
stuff, because
yeah,
this is a really interesting stuff, and I know where I'm trying to take this,
yeah. I know.
and
I'm
you're
thinking of
saying
that. I'm
you're
keeping it in
getting
my
there
mind. Yeah,
before we get there.
yeah,
One of the things that's interesting me what you're saying is that obviously your dad being a producer, you were grown up sort of almost in the blood of having a sort of studio ethic. You understood, whereas for me, I didn't walk into a studio till I was in my mid 20s, and it was an 8 track. It wasn't even a proper recording studio. It was I had to wait a long time. So when I was in a studio, it was like a
yeah,
rarity, and so you were like, "Oh, what's
yeah.
going on?" And you had no idea, of how to do it, and You know, some,
Magical, right? Magical.
you know, can you take the front end off your bass drum? What? Why?
Oh,
Why do you want me to do that for? You know, all these things that they would say.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so, but you had that ethic, but also I can see the fact that you were a percussionist and then a drummer. It like doubles up your angles to get on the session, doesn't it? In a way, because
Yeah, to some
when
degree.
well when I was doing dance music, I was a dance music producer for a while. We would have a drum beat, which was basically boom, cat, boom, cat, boom, cat. To get that swing, you could either program it in or get a percussionist to play some percussion. The percussion could bring that drum machine to life.
Right.
And I would try and do it, but I never could do it that well. But I can see when there's more budgets. Did you find that with your age, you know, going through that much more dance music era that they were spicing up basically drum machine
You're
drum
so well
parts?
read and you're so knowledgeable because you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of people, when because I know part of your thread is about wanting to talk about, or maybe the main thing is about how the session will either works or how it has worked and where it's headed.
Yeah.
Definitely, there was a really long phase. I'm thinking I'm going to go back 20 years, really, where a lot of what I was called in for, a lot of things that probably didn't really surface that high, come to big prominence. A lot of dance records, a lot of underground dance things of the 90s and things like that. That I would go in and I'd be the guy. I'd be the real thing.
The only
I'd
real
be,
thing apart from you and the singer.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Me and the singer, and I come in and they go, "Can you just give it a thing?" And 9 times out of 10, and Alex Acuna was famously wrote this in a brilliant little booklet he did with Airto, where they were asking about how he works in the studio. And it was that basically was the effect of probably the most useful instrument I've ever, the most recorded and most useful instrument I've ever used is a shaker. Tambourines are kind of a known, you think church, you think tambourine. It's just what's in the school
mm,
locker in the music department, invariably a broken tambourine or something like that. There might be a shaker, but they're usually little maracas or something. They'll be, from an airport or something like that. But shakers, ganzas, kashishi, and on it goes. There are all these different beautiful instruments that actually you've got to think about the hi-hat. If there's a hi-hat on the tune, you've got or you've got or whatever it is, you've got these
yeah,
patterns. Very quickly, you've got to go, well, they want me to bring some real feel. They want it to move. They want something that's very slightly fluid. They might still loop you, and probably a lot of the time they still did, but they want that 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, however many bars they want of you, or perform the whole thing. As I got better, it became my mission to be able to play it as tight and as well, still being human,
mm,
to keep it, just as I mean, okay, I'm turning up for a session and all I've got to realize all I've got to do, I might get lucky and be able to play bongos or something,
mm,
is basically play a shaker and a tambourine, maybe on the 2 and the 4, or both,
mm.
or opposites. I've got to work with the hi-hat, I've got to work with the drum machine that's going, and I've got a producer looking at a thing going like this back then, or just looking at the grid constantly going, always a bit out there, always a bit out there. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But I made it my mission to be able to do that as well as I possibly could. I'm human, it's always going to move, but you get to a place where it feels good, it feels fluid, and then you get called back. That's how it's supposed to work, but I did an absolute shit ton of that. Sorry to swear, but yeah.
Well, it's funny because my drum tech, who has been with me for a while, he's also Napalm Death's drum tech, and he really knows his drums. He's also a carpenter, and he's been developing a shaker, and I use them. And this shaker's square, and each side's got a different type of wood.
Oh,
And
nice.
it's so and what I've found is you can either hold it like on the points, or you can hold and you can mute it. You can get different sounds because
Yeah,
that you are correct. People would think, "Oh, what's a shaker?" But even me as a novice knows when you play one, I think, "Oh my God, it's actually quite out of control because there's so many different sounds within a shaker."
yeah.
I'll get him to send you one down. I think he'd be honoured to send you one. I'll get him to send you one of these shakers down if
Oh,
that's okay.
yeah,
And
bless.
then
Yeah,
when we come
amazing. Yeah,
back, you can do some shaking on camera. That will be good because it
yeah.
reminds me of there's a Miles Davis documentary and I2's on it. And they ask him a question. I2 sat there in front of his huge percussion setup that his setup he's got like looks like bits out of the kitchen and all
Yeah, yeah,
strange stuff, look things that look like fish skeletons. And it's all hanging up there. And they
yeah.
say, "Can you sort of describe Miles Davis's music?" And he sort of gets the wrong end of the stick and he looks around and he goes, "Well, it's like this." And then he tries to sing Miles, and it's strange. And his face is
I
he's
get
not
it.
full.
I get it.
It's not fully committed to it. It says it's a bit like this. Dum 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 dum. And he's looking at the interview, and the interviewer's going, "I didn't really mean that." And but he goes, "I'm going to front it," and he starts to go, "Whoop, boom, 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 bap, boom, 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 boom." He's doing all these things. It's
Got it.
incredible. I thought you're off your head because you're not.
Yeah.
Normally you go, it's sort of like that, but he doesn't. He doesn't. He keeps going, and he's adding all this bitches brew type a cappella, and he's looking around his vast percussion setup. He's going, I need, because he's obviously bloody I-air add some percussion I-air to your vocal. And he looks around and he picks up the tambourine and he starts playing it. And it sounds like John Bonham's opened up. It's about this thing comes in, and I remember thinking, "Oh my god, that's why he's I-air to." When you hear it in context, you're sort of used to it because you hear percussionists like this on records. But
Yeah.
to see it in front of you, it's just like the power and the amount of color that he gets out of that tambourine is incredible,
Oh
absolutely
yeah, when he did the
incredible.
Pandero stuff, where he got up to the mic, and yeah, I mean, two things about him. One is that when I was young, I was in my teens, I saw him at Sweet Basil
Yeah.
with Gil Evans Orchestra, and this was one of the biggest educations of my life. My dad took me to New York, which is quite good, with my best mate, my parents, and I spent time with. We stayed at a guy called John Clark's house, who's a French horn, I think he used to play with Jacko. Um, Beautiful man. And the good thing about that was my mate was a martial artist, and John was into Aikido, so they had a lot to talk about. We were like
Mm.
15, 16. Anyway, I went to Sweet Basil with my father to see Gil Evans play, and Ayato was playing percussion. All he had was, I think it was three cowbells, a tambourine, and a pair of clogs and some sticks. And he did the whole gig. And I sat there absolutely mesmerized at that. And it was like the biggest education of what you can get out of just that palette. Because it was this big, Sweet Basil's was, I don't know if it still
Yeah.
exists even,
Yeah.
a average size sort of club, not far off, no, smaller than Ronnie's actually, what I'm talking about, smaller than Ronnie's. So, the Gil Evans Orchestra squeezed into this.
Mm.
Mark Egan, I think, was
They
playing
had a
bass.
residency there, didn't they? I think for
I
a
think they
long
did,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Lou Soloff was a friend of
Yeah.
my father's who was in it. Danny Gottlieb, I think, was the drummer, I think, but I was glued on Ayato, sort of sitting in with them. And it was, yeah, three cowbells, a pair of clogs, some sticks, and a tambourine and a pandira or something. And he did the whole gig and all that kind of that he does, and it was magical. And I was like, oh, so I'm at this point, I'm beginning to hoard. I want every instrument. I'm trying to eat the world. I'm trying to get every available sound there is known to man. 8 million congas, all this. And I go, hang on a minute. That's all he's got. It was kind of a real eye opener. But back to the sort of like doing sessions. Yeah, you could bring a cartload of stuff. Fox, snow fox, maybe.
It was a cloud.
We decided to
It
start
was a
raining.
cloud.
It's a puffy cloud. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, you. Um,
And this is going to get the views up. Don't worry about it.
well,
I'll
she's off.
just put. I'll
This
chat.
is
I'm going to
Bella.
change the thumbnail now, and I'm going to go. Cats run round a drum room.
Drum room, yeah. This is Bella. She's the one that wants all the attention. That's why she's doing it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I had a cat called Bella, but she died. She didn't live that long. We
Oh,
had two cats, Lola and Bella didn't last that long. So
oh, no.
it's a
Yeah, we've
shame,
just
isn't it?
they're just over a year old. They're gorgeous. The three sisters,
And
and
I hate to say that
yeah.
my mom's taking her cat this very day at this very moment, 11 o'clock. I'm afraid she had him booked in to be put down. So
Oh, bless her.
let's just
Oh,
give it
yeah.
up to Jackson the cat.
Jackson
He
the
was
cat.
old and he wasn't well, and he'd had a good life. But Jackson the cat, right at the moment this is being filmed, is probably either waiting in the vets to go in to be executed or the dirty deed has been done. So,
Bless
but
him.
he's got a mention on my channel, and I wouldn't have remembered it, because it's
There you
actually my
go.
brother's birthday today. It was my granddad's birthday
Oh,
yesterday, and
oh
Jackson the
wow.
cat is being executed at the vet. So that's what's going on. And then you've got
That's
cats running all around, and it's the world's a strange place. It all seems to be interlinked by some sort of bizarre synchronicity that I don't understand. But
yeah.
I keep going at all costs. What were the first? What were the early sessions you did? What were the notable people? Did you do any embarrassing ones? What Because do you know what my first session was ever? My first my first session was Nigel Hawthorne from Yes Minister.
Yeah.
That's yeah,
Wow.
it was a folk album. It was in about 95, I suppose. I was about 25, 26, something like that. And they were doing a album of Houseman poetry that he was narrating. So it was all this sort of English folk stuff with Nigel Hawthorne. So that's my first session credential is Nigel Hawthorne. You won't beat that unless you got Frankie Howard in there, or I bet you have with your vast actually now. Come on, what
I
what are
can,
the really strangest ones you've done? Come on. You got your
I mean,
Beyonce's, you got your Michael Jackson, you've got all these ones, haven't you?
I can tell you a funny one. Not a session, but a gig that Dominic and I did.
This is Dominic Miller from Sting's
Yeah, sorry,
band.
Dominic. Yeah, yeah. Uh, was it the? I think it was. We supported the Grumbleweeds or the Wurzels. He'll
Was it? Oh,
correct
the
me.
Wurzels
He'll
would be
also
better. They're
probably
both great.
he'll cuss me for saying that, but it was hilarious. We just sitting there going, "Is this where we're at? Is it like a duo, like doing Egberto Gismonti, None of Visconcella's kind of like serious, muso stuff. We're supporting. I think it was the Wurzels, a
See,
gig somewhere.
you've had a more illustrious career than me. I have got loads of these types of stories, and I know it's your interview, but anyone knows my channel is, and
I
my arrogance means I have to put my stories in the world. I once did a gig with Stan Boardman, the
Stan
Liverpool
Boardman.
comedian
Oh,
who
okay, yeah,
who
yeah.
did his famous comedy routine was about German airplanes bombing his chip shop. Remember? In the Fokker
Yeah,
Wolf, and he used to
I
say
think I know what you're talking about.
That Fokker's
Yeah,
bombed our
that's it.
chip shop. That Fokker, that was basically the joke.
Right,
But
right.
it always stuck in my mind. It was at a Butlins, and because when I was driving there's a bloke in front of me who was driving so fast, and suddenly this badger runs out from the undergrowth, runs across, and this car hits it, and the badger's just taken out, spins off dead. And then when I get there, and I didn't know Stan Boardman was playing. I was just playing in some tribute band. So I get there, just a dressing room. Stan Boardman walks in, and he goes, "Hello, chaps." And he went, "You're not going to believe this. I just twatted a badger." The American audience are going, what has
What
got?
is?
Why have they got
Yeah,
two English people on this video?"
brilliant. Oh dear. Very good.
Yeah,
You've done them all,
I've
man.
sung "Show Me the Way to Amarillo" with the bloke who did that. I was on stage with him singing that,
Oh,
the backing vocals. What's
he's
his
brilliant
name?
from what's his name?
Uh,
Brilliant comedian.
yeah. And anyway, I was sad, and I was dragged on and was singing next to Sue Pollard from Heidi High. And I got
Yeah,
billions of these. I don't because it's
yeah,
it's because my career's not been that good. It's been okay, lower to mid level, and so you have to pick up gigs that you wouldn't have taken.
yeah.
Sue Pollard.
Well, but you know what? It's about love of music. Like
No, it was about paying the bills.
I, uh, well, there's, oh
It was
yeah.
about
I
desperately
was going
paying
to
the
get
bills.
there. I was going
Yeah.
to get there. Absolutely, it was. I can tell you this: a drummer in a band that I was working for many, many years, was laughing at me. As we were on tour, we were at the second or third tour, and I've said this to a few friends of mine, and they were like, "Yeah, you were that guy." I was so all I wanted to do was not be a session guy, be famous, be any of those. I just wanted to play music. Now, the mission, as I said a while back, I did, and maybe I am a jazz musician to some degree, but I really thought that's what I'd do. But of course, as a wanting to be a jazz musician in England on percussion, there's a little bit of there was no roadmap. I wrote down a few names of people I
Mm.
wanted to sort of name check who were influential to me in this country. Because of course I'm looking to America. I'm looking at the sort of session world in America. When I was coming up to 20, you're now seeing how my brain works. I'm flitting
Yeah.
here, but there was a kind of a decision like, do I stay in England or do I go to America or try to go to America, go to New York, LA, wherever? Slow cat. Um, um,
That's in honor of my cat there.
yeah,
Because
it
they've
is.
heard they heard
Look
what I
how
was saying about it. They go, "Oh my God, they've been a bit flippant about this pussycat up in the Midlands regions being executed at the vets. I think we should have a little
I'm
bit
laughing.
bit of respect." What's that
I'm
great
laughing.
big thumb that's appeared then?
Oh, that's the whole whatever that thing.
Well,
You know
mine
when you
doesn't
do that,
do
or you
that.
do the
How'd you do
balloons. You know.
that? It was a big
I
thumb
know,
came up.
I know. Yeah, it happens. We're constantly talking about this. Or if you do this, the balloons will eventually appear. Or yeah, I'm vegan and I'm a massive animal lover. So my heart is going out
Oh, well, how
to
long have we been
your
going
your
for? Because
mothers.
it's taken you a pretty long time to mention that. You know what vegans are like. I think
Oh
you
yeah.
you didn't get straight in with it, did you? You
Why
know,
did that? Yeah. Why did
you
I
let
do
us talk
that?
about something else.
I promise, and I say this a lot as well. I'm truly not the angry tree hugging, shouty vegan. I'm the quiet type. But why did I mention that? I don't know. It's because I just love animals.
It's probably
Absolutely.
because my cat's being put down, and you've
Well,
been
that's what's touched
yeah.
me. I'm like,
But we're
oh,
not going
but
to eat him.
no, exactly. It's not
He'll
going to
just
be.
be put in a
And
bag
he
and
was
buried in the garden.
exactly. He was loved, so he had a
Yeah,
great life. Yeah. So that I don't
bin
know what.
liner bag. Well, we'll stick a brick on top just to
Yeah, I've probably
know.
pissed off a load of people who want to view this now. Oh, he's a vegan. Oh, Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so what was I saying? Lost the thread again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But rubbish sessions. So what were your
Rubbish
first
session.
sessions? Where how did you get access? I mean, I've done sessions. I've done quite a few,
Yeah.
but I never sort of you know got in there. I never seemed to do the right thing to get in there because I would have loved to be a session drummer. I don't think I was cut out for it. I mean, this is the big thing, isn't it? And this is the low level passive aggressive hostility that you get. Is you're there all there with all your posh drums behind you, with all your little cats running around doing whatever they want. And I
Play
would
the
have
cat later.
I know I would have hated it. I just know. I mean, my YouTube's popular because I'm a contrarian, because I say what I think, and I'm like to get people wound up. I mean, that's all they're all the worst things, aren't they, to be the
No,
session
I mean,
player?
we talked about this when we spoke before on the
Yeah.
phone. You mentioned that, and but look where you found yourself, and you have done stuff, and you're a passionate, knowledgeable musician. I mean, it's extraordinary what you know. And now look where you are. You're interviewing like some incredible people. I mean, I feel a
Like
little,
you.
well, bless you, but I feel, I'm kind of more of an under the radar guy. But you've had some people who
No,
have,
no one's got your CV. I'll tell you. They would,
no,
all these jazz rock legends. They're all sat there doing their 200-seater gigs. And playing on records that
yeah,
sell about 5,000 copies. Yeah, I mean your CV is unbelievable, and I know putting on a serious thing here because the trouble with you, Miles, is that because we've chatted already and we have bonded a little bit already, haven't we?
for
So I feel
sure,
like I'm just
for
having to
sure.
keep forgetting. I feel like I'm having a chat with a mate. But your CV is so incredible, and you must have it must obviously there's the obvious skills and talents that you've got, but what about the way of negotiating your way in that environment? Because you're not the boss. It's not your art that is, it's their art, and it's their arse on the line. It's their reputation. And I understand all that, and people forget this. So,
Dude, yeah, yeah.
there can be prima donna behavior. There can be what seems like, ridiculous. What's the hell? My phone's dripping off now. How did you get into it? How did you have to learn those things? Did it come easy to you? Because my whole career seemed like me being in a situation which I didn't understand. That's every single bit of it, right up until now, has felt like I don't really know what I'm doing here. Every single time, all of it has been. I've never felt like, oh, I know how to do this ever.
Yeah, yeah. No, you've covered a lot of ground of probably what I would say already, and I guess yeah, they're probably anyone who is watching is going answer the bloody question. Yeah, because
Well, give us some examples. Give us
yeah,
some
yeah. Okay,
memories of early sessions and experiences you have that sort of illustrates what it is to be a session player and the sort of things you have to negotiate your way
yeah. I
through.
mean, hard work, obviously. Be good at your instrument, obviously. Turn up on time. Really, all the obvious things to do.
Hmm.
I think I wore my heart on my sleeve. I was very passionate. I was interested. Um,
You gave it the love.
I gave it the love.
That's
We
what I've
talked
been
about the
told
word
many a
love.
time. People
We
want you to
talked
be in
about
there
that.
giving it the love.
Giving it the love. As I said, I had visions of playing in Weather Report. I didn't say that before, but that's the truth of
Yeah.
who I was. Like, I want to be Alex Acuna, Badrina, Minu Sinilu, the list goes on. All of the incredible Bobby Thomas, just I wanted to be that guy. Oh, wrong generation. Oh
Jose
well.
Rossi. And I got told
Jose
off for
Ross.
not remembering Jose Rossi the other day. Someone
Yeah.
messaged me and goes, "You know how
He-
good he was?" I go, "Yeah, no, but we're the percussionist.
oh yeah, it's like
They're
yeah,
like the
pick
best
one.
ones."
Pick one. Yeah, some of the greatest to ever do it. Yeah. Um, so I wanted to be that guy. But what I found myself was in the UK playing percussion. And the work that was available to me was going to be probably pop music. And I was a
Betty
little
Boo.
bit. So I was going to all the jams. I was doing all the things. I was playing a lot in cafes, like with a little jazz Latin outfit.
Yeah.
I guess the easiest way for me to explain it is that and you know, so all of the things you need to have: passion, skill, turn up on time, be affable, be interested, show the love, be prepared to learn. You know, I'm 16, 17. I don't
Mm.
know jack about jack. I just know that I love it. I didn't go to music school. I don't have theory. I have none of it. And I'm that guy that,
Mm.
you know, is a little bit got the rug is a bit
What about
loose.
things like reading skills? Were they ever an issue?
No, I mean, if it ever was, I got fairly skilled at preempting that. I mean, again, a lot of people who know me, they're like, they know not to call me for a, you know, three take reading gig, bang, Miles has got to knock it out of the park. But 9 times out of 10, a producer that gets to know me would go, oh yeah, you don't read, but it's just, I guess, flattery or compliment to me. They trust me. They'll like, you hear it a couple of times. I know you'll find your path here. I've written a part, but I think you're going to bring you to the table, and I actually want that. But here, I need you to be, you know. So read the room, listen. I've got some great mates. Like, I hope you do, if you haven't already, do an interview with Ian Thomas, who's just fantastic.
Oh, what a master. What an absolute
Later
master.
days of sessioning, we've done certain things, and there's a head nod, there's an agreement, there's a kind of, he knows I don't read, he does. I'm watching him. Gary Husband, same thing. I did a jazz session once with Gary, and I came in last minute, and I'm like, oh God, this is a full-on burn, you know, proper
Mm.
jazz, straight ahead, straight to vinyl session. I had no idea that what was going to happen. And I walk in, and Gary's like, I got your back, don't worry, just follow me, kind of thing, you know. So I can do that as a percussionist. As a drummer, forget it. You know, I'll stick in my lane. So to go back, so I'm how I got in passion mainly, I think, was I was in a little Latin gig. I was fifth, no, what was I? 16. And I was playing at the back, playing bongos with my long hair down.
Mm.
And Robert Palmer was in the audience at this wine bar with his manager, I think. And it was because of a friend who said, oh, you should go and check out this little band. Oh, by the way, there's a young kid playing percussion. I don't know much more than that, but I think he was there to maybe see what the band was like. I didn't necessarily think it was a particularly great band, but I was
Mm.
just happy to be playing in a wine bar. You know, I'd left school. I was, you know, what am I going to do? Got to do something. So turning up at clubs and jamming. Anything I could. In fact, that would be something I would say. I know the scene has changed dramatically, but anywhere you can go to a jam when you're young, do it. Turn up, be present. If you've got the guts to get up and play, do it. If just watch, be around, get talking. That's the old-fashioned way, but it still has some relevance, I think.
I
Just
think
be,
that can be in the modern world. I think that translates to whatever's out there, get involved 100%. Whatever the music scene is, just get involved 100%. Because that's what everyone who's made it has said. That
yeah,
I've always realized that they were doing it 110%. They were so committed to it that it was every minute of the day in every single
absolutely.
way. And they didn't turn things down, and they didn't wonder whether they should do stuff or not. They took absolutely everything that was going. And I think
You're
that's a
so,
very,
so right.
very good piece of advice.
Yeah, you know, I love that movie, Yes Man, you know,
I don't know the film, but yeah,
what's his name? Who's in Lila? Oh, my brain
Jim
today.
Carrey.
Thank you. Jim Carrey, a movie called Yes Man. It's a great example of just say yes, see where it takes you kind of thing.
Mm.
And I was nervous, I was unsure, I was whatever. But anyway, to finish that story, I'm in the club, I'm playing, heads down, I'm shy, but I want to play. So the passion is there, but I'm a little bit, you know. But at the end of the gig, now I didn't bear in mind I didn't know who Robert Palmer was. I sort of would have if I joined the
How do
dots,
you
I
not
might
know who
have.
Robert Palmer is? Lead singer Led Zeppelin?
Well, there you go.
Sorry about this.
Sorry, yeah,
I got to differentiate myself from the other music YouTubers, you see. So I
yeah.
I have to throw in these stupid jokes all the way through it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So he comes up to me and his manager at the end, and they go, oh, you know, you're obviously what are you doing in about a week's time? I'm doing a little recording session in some live radio things. And I'm like, oh, right. Now, the rest of the band are all going, but they're all older than me. They're all like in their 20s. And I'm sort of going, yeah, all right, yeah, whatever. And I wasn't, Dot's not
Yeah.
joining. But he said, he's just, and he's a really nice bloke, by the way. He just said, I really noticed you. I mean, I was looking for percussionists, but I noticed your passion for what you were doing. And of course, again, in the moment, I didn't really, "Oh, okay, cool, nice one, man. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, great. I'll turn up. What's the, giving a card again? This all seems so old school, doesn't it? But giving a
Mm.
card. I'm 16, I think I must have been. Must have been
And
about
what year
16.
would this be?
Right. Well, I'm 58. I just turned 58. So whenever, I don't ask me to do the maths on that, even though I'm a drummer.
No, that's 1982.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I didn't
He,
do the maths. I'm 56, so I know when I was 16, that was in 1984.
oh, there you go. Of course, yeah.
You see,
Right.
that's
So,
how I did that.
that's how you did that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and he says, turn up. So I turn up and I did a little recording session with him. I don't know if that ever saw the light of day, which is something I was going to touch on in a minute as
Mm.
well, perhaps. And did some live radio stuff with him and one little kind of wine bar-y type sort of concert gig. And that was kind of like my first, and that's a huge leap,
Yeah.
calling card. Before that, I'd done some record. I've been in studios. One with a band that my second band I was ever in. I was the very first band I was in was a reggae band. And if any of my mates that were in the band with me now they'd be laughing. It was a band called Rooker, with a guy called Gil, who was the drummer. Neil Lambert was the bass player, and Mark McAvoy was singing and playing keys, if I remember right. Yeah, schoolmates. Anyway, and then I went up to another band called Savage House, and we went into a studio and we did some recording. That was my first personal kind of experience of walking into a studio. And although, as you said earlier,
Mm.
I had been around studios and recording sessions at home, gigs. I mean, I would literally at Ronnie Scott's when I was a kid. My older brother told me, I'd just be sitting amongst the cables as my dad was rewiring the desk at Ronnie's and things like that. Ronnie Scott and Pete King, they used to, like hang out with me and give me toys and things like that. And but I spent a lot of time as a little kid at Ronnie's, kind of bored out of my mind. But I was there, so I was steeped, swamped in it. I was
Mm.
sort of embroiled in it. My father, when we were eating dinner, I've told a friend of mine the other day, it'd be like Count Basie on his massive quad speakers and quad system, an incredible, sound system because
Mm.
he's into his music. We couldn't hear ourselves talk. Most people would be like rock and roll. My dad it was Count Basie, big band, or Kenton, Stan Kenton, like, what? And I'm going, yeah, I'm really enjoying it. But so I grew up like in this sort of madhouse of music. Um, but yeah, it was just sort of luck, really, that I happened to be. I mean, I put myself in the position of luck by being in a wine bar,
Mm.
playing in a little Latin band, just doing my thing, and I got spotted. And I suppose the point I'm trying to make is that no matter what level of gig, which sort of hopefully comes around a little bit to what we were saying earlier, it doesn't matter what you did, it's the passion with which you did it, the seriousness with which you take your responsibility being in that band, the care to tune your bongos correctly, the little things. Like he just came, my point is that Robert came up to me and went, you're obviously really passionate about this. I can see you're trying to hide, you're a bit embarrassed.
Mm.
And I'm a shy, spotty 16-year-old, and he's like, but it's your passion. I can see you really love this. And it's something that has carried all the way through my career as a sort of as a solid. I think if somebody sees you walk in the room and you don't walk in with a kind of, I'm the shit, I'm the man, I got this.
Mm.
You walk in and it's going to be a learning experience every
Every
single
single, I mean, I think that's the
every
thing of being
time.
experienced is knowing that you know nothing, and when you walk in you've got to sort of that's being creative. You've got to sort of negotiate your way through the situation you just found yourself in. Most of my career was me going, "How the hell was I? How was I ended up here? What am I
Yeah.
doing here? That's that
Yeah.
thing. What am I doing? Why am I having to do this? It's like you work and work, and then you think, what am I having to do this for? I don't like it, and and I often think that a lot of the reasons why a lot of people don't have success is because they're really deep down frightened of the success. They're frightened of becoming who they want to be because it will be frightening for you to achieve the thing you want to achieve.
It's talked about a lot, that for sure.
Yeah,
It's a
I
very
really
complex
believe
one, that one.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really believe this.
Yeah.
It's fascinating what you're saying because it, most musicians I've spoken to, when they look back on their careers, they will go, That happened because of that. That happened because of this. These moments where you knew the door had changed.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
um, and it's uh, just before Christmas. I had the great British jazz guitarist Jim Mullen came down to the studio,
I
who had
saw that.
who had played with Robert Palmer and also said he was a lovely bloke in the band Vinegar Joe. He wasn't so complimentary about Elkie Brooks, but he said some nice things about Robert Palmer. And on bass was a bass player called Wan Yen Chan, who, if I hadn't have met him, I wouldn't have had a career. Now, the reason why I met one who then introduced me to my mentor Kevin Gammon, and that's really what got me to do music. Really, was meeting Kev.
Mm.
I met them on a gig that was for a children's dance group. They were doing like little dance things for the parents, and it was a drummer and keyboardist. It was only two of us, drums and keyboards, and then we got this bass player in. He came in. That was it because
Yeah.
he wasn't quite full enough, and I wasn't getting that much for it, but I'd taken it because I needed the money. And the day of the gig, I remember I put my drums in the car. I was packing the drums in, and a car came down the road and hit the open door of the passenger seat and ripped the door off. And I had to sort of gaffer it back on, thinking, right, whatever I'm making for these two gigs has now just been.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the point of this? Not realizing that
Yeah.
the point of it was about to completely change my life. That
Yeah.
it was that gig, that was the gig. And then when I think back to it, if I hadn't
Yeah.
have taken that, if I hadn't met one, if I hadn't met Kev, I wouldn't have played with Rock Plant. I wouldn't become a music teacher. I wouldn't have got things on my CV that enabled me to do other things. It's just, it's incredible that nothing's going to happen unless you get yourself out there, and fate works in a very strange way.
Sliding Doors, is that the movie?
Yeah, it is.
Sort of
It is really like
influence
that,
to that?
and I
Yeah.
find it actually quite spooky because as I've got older, I do believe that your intention and the drive of who you are is related to this. That your life is like a story, and if you can see it like a story, it'll make sense. And you have
Yeah.
to see your life as a story because it stitches it together. And once you can line your story up with what's going around you, then in any given situation, it changes the path which you choose. It's like being a fork in the road. That your whole life's that all the time. And I believe that music plays a really powerful part in this for us musicians who are lucky enough just to like it, like we do, because
Yeah.
everything in my life has come from my love of music, including talking to you right now, and you talking to
You
me is
beat
the
me to
same
it. It's
thing.
exactly what I was going to say. The same thing. It's this weird roadmap that
Yeah.
can make sense and make absolutely no sense. It's noises in the air. The thing that we're constantly trying to achieve is a bunch of noises in the air that we all, and the beauty of painting, 5, 10 people or more, three, whatever, a trio, painting a picture together. That's kind of an extraordinary thing, like football teams. A lot of musicians I know are into football. I quite like football too. Or any team sport. I very much love the term team sport in music. That's my thrill. Like, not that we're here to talk about drugs, but I was around a lot of, like most musicians, at
Mm.
some point that kind of comes into the room. And quite young, I could see everyone like, smoking spliffs, kind of going, yeah, this is the shit. And I'm like, is it though? Is it really? And the thing that was happening to me was going, when I'm really elated and excited, it's when we've played there's this like 16 bars or a section of this piece of music that I was literally out of my mind ecstatic. It was like the endorphins, whatever's kicking off, the human mechanics and chemicals are going, ah! And when I clocked that, I was like, I think I'm gonna have to back off this weed thing. Now, that's only me. I
Mm.
get it. I've played with musicians who are out of their minds and they're still incredible. And there's a whole other thing going on there. I get it. We can talk about that for hours, or I'm sure there'll be somebody
Mm.
who can talk a lot more with a lot more authority than me. But for me
Oh, thanks for
personally,
that. My mum was watching this. I've never taken any drugs, mum.
no, um,
Get
yeah,
back to killing your cat.
yeah, yes. But just it sounds maybe a bit ridiculous, but like once I'd got a high off music, and it was on.
It's just the trouble with these interviews
It's
is
like
that I find a musician, they're a brilliant musician. I start chatting to them, and it's spot everything you're saying is so inspiring because it's so full of truth, and it just reaffirms something that I find very I find it inspiring. I find music inspiring, but I find talking about this thing also inspiring. I think
Yeah,
this is what the YouTube is about. You talk
yeah.
about this thing, and that also inspires people as much as the music does. And I think when you get to a certain age, our age, it's actually talking about that thing is in a way even more exciting than the actual thing because I think as you get older, it's harder to grasp that. It's like a nostalgia almost.
Yeah,
And
you know that Rick Beato sort of pushback you did, which I thought was
yeah,
incredible, actually. I mean, he's incredible, no doubt about it. Fascinating. He opened a really good dialogue,
he's
but
the
the whole thing
darling in
about
terms
like,
of this. Yeah,
the whole you've done it by the time you're 30, you've kind of cracked it. Is there really
yeah.
anything more? I think again, maybe this to some degree because music isn't just playing the instrument. It's a team effort. It's a guiding light. It's my religion, for want of a better,
Well,
it's my
it's
means to express stating.
the thing that the thought that's in my mind talking to you and hearing your story and knowing the stuff you've done and all the things you've had to negotiate and going, how did you turn up, on a Beyonce session? Because I'd be cacking myself. I'll be cacking myself because I've got enough knowledge to know what could go wrong and not enough knowledge to know how to get around it, and I've heard all the horror stories of people doing stuff. And when I played with Robert Plant, he told me a lot about session players and how he regards session players from his point of view, and I got a deep understanding of that, which sort of shocked me because it was so unlike us musicians think.
Mm.
Um, but the there's a part of this that is it's very interesting to me, and I was watching a Russell Brand YouTube video, and of course
Mr.
Russell.
Controversial at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, forget what he says. It wasn't that I'm going to comment on. It's not.
Park that.
It's not
Yeah.
the content. So
Yeah.
nobody needs to worry about this.
No need
It
needs
was
to worry
something
about
I
that.
observed that was under the surface on this video.
Yeah.
Is that he's had all sorts of troubles. He has been drug addicts, and then all these things has happened, and he's got his act together, sort of now. Is what he's saying, and he's living a very spiritual life. And what he said was, he said he has to work so hard to live this spiritual life, to be mindful, to see the beauty in the simple things, to get up in the morning and just make himself a cup of tea and sit in the garden and listen to the bird song. He has to work at it. And then he said he looks at his wife, she just does it. She doesn't need all this spirituality and gobbledygook because she just does it. And I
Yeah.
think normal people, as I call them, are like that. I think musicians have something, it's not that they've got something missing, they have an imbalance. And for me, that imbalance on the negative side, um, it was extreme anxiety that was
I can
almost
relate to that
crippling.
though. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what I found was is that I was very aware when I was young that when I was doing music, it went away, absolutely went away. And that euphoria that you describe, that I know so well, of
You
being
would
in
know.
that moment, it's like the anxiety demons that are all about the future and the past they go, because you're in the present and you're in this thing which is, I used to call it the eternal now. It's present,
Beautiful.
but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
also
Yeah. Yeah.
and music was about this eternal now. It did dealt with time. And then as I got older, I started to think, and I was teaching music and coming across all my students are exactly the same. They either had anxiety or they had depression, and both of those were rooted in some sort of self-loathing.
Yeah.
Then there was another group that was sort of autistic Asperger's, and then I started to see I was a little bit on the spectrum as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of the autistic kids I taught, they loved me because
Yeah.
I think when I was thinking, yeah, but they like me because I understand what they go. Andy understands what we're like, and I go, yeah, because I'm a bit autistic, aren't I? So I started to think that these things are not the main things. The anxiety, depression, self-loathing, autism, Asperger's, perfectionist, blah blah blah. All these things that musicians have are the byproducts of not being creative. And so I start to think the creativity that musicians have in human history must have been so valuable that it's evolved as a thing. So in a population, you will have all the normal people and they're fine, but they need the artist to do a certain thing. And in times
Yeah.
of trouble, the people who have survived, and because I read this book and it said around about 10,000 BC, there was this terrible calamity, and people have discussed it. Graham Hancock's obsessed with this. But the truth is, there was a great calamity, and the population dwindled down to about the size of a football crowd in the whole population. And the people who
Or
survived are the ones who,
in
in the whole of the world, the population. Now, I might get corrected because I've got very clever people who watch this site,
yeah, yeah,
watch this channel. Sorry, so they'll probably throw it. But there was a thing, and the population came back, and people got through it because they travelled, they did different things, they changed their way of doing it, and they would have been governed by some sort of shamanistic characters who would have pulled the group together and said, we need to do this. And that would be based upon their emotional hunch. Those people have survived. And I've always thought that shamanistic, like intuitive, but also being able to pull the people together with stories or create
mm,
community through percussion, drumming, and the magic that says, so if you're telling everyone to uproot yourselves and go march for miles up into the cold regions of the world or whatever they had to do to
yeah,
survive,
yeah,
the people that would have made that possible were these weird people that were sat around looking for problems. They weren't happy. The rest of them all sat, they were all happy, but there's people going, I'm not
yeah,
too sure about this. The clouds seem weird. The spirits in the forest are saying, and I think that evolves into this because there's a bottleneck, and our civilization, which suddenly explodes out of nowhere, explodes out of nowhere out of creative people, and the creative people are basically they're the people in society that are addicted to problems, aesthetic problems. They need to solve aesthetic problems. They need to make the world great, and they need to get into that zone that you're talking about. And when they're not into that zone, they have to take drugs. And when they're not into that, but at the esoteric heart of the music industry are people that supply that, and and we do not value what these people do for our culture. It's like
yeah,
once you're fed and warm, the only reason to stay alive really is, and you love your family and all that. But the thing that makes life worth living is the product of the aesthetic observations of very creative people. Why do we need it? And I think that's what's chimed in my mind, listening to the it would be lovely for you to say I always turned up on time and I knew what they did and I learned all the stuff, but it's not that. It was your
mm,
commitment and love to the music that was recognized.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think it's because it's at the service of something unbelievably powerful. And I know this is the message of my channel. I know I'm talking all over your interview, but these conversations, it's that's what's come out of this story. All your stories are telling are saying you were a guy that loved music. That there was you were quiet and shy, which means there's probably a bit of self-loathing. You weren't confident, but within that, at the esoteric heart of that, was this love of the very thing that creates community. Because that's what I've always thought percussionists do. Drummers and percussionists, we create community because
yeah, yeah. I don't
um,
know what that's about. I mean, man, you've hit on so many things there. It's kind of beautiful. Puzzle. Sorry to interrupt because I could listen to you
yeah,
for hours.
don't interrupt my interview here.
Uh,
I mean, what are you even doing here? I feel bad about when I finish these things, I go off and I'll beat myself up because I've got self.
oh,
I go, you talk too much. Why do you have to talk so much? You're so arrogant. You have to
no.
shout and talk, and and have a tell your rubbish stories. You haven't played with bloody Michael
Andy,
Jackson,
Andy,
Beyonce.
man, honestly, you get it. That's the beautiful thing. That's why I wrote to you. That's why Dominic wrote to you, and why people are reaching out. You get it. You know, to all those, he gets it. You get it. It's great. And I was going to
We got to
say,
talk about it because
yeah,
it won't go away. It might be that culture forgets it for a while and then goes, what are we missing at the moment? And you go, well, part of what you're missing is people in a room playing together because
well,
for millennia, at the end of the day, we all sat round in the village, and the bloke got his drums out, and people sang and they hit drums because that's fundamentally what music making is. And
mm,
when somebody hits a drum, you hear it, but you also see it. I think this is the thing that nobody gets about the drums. It's if you're playing a harp or you're playing some sort of piano, you got someone there going doing this, but you can't relate to it unless you're a musician. But a drummer, you get it. You get it. Yeah, because you can see it and hear it, and
some drummers, anyway. Yeah, don't want to go there. Yeah,
don't you think though? It's there's a that it's something to do with us. in our beingness, there are rhythms, as I was saying before we came on,
Yeah,
this incredible interview with Roland Vasquez, which will
that sounds
go and
mind-blowing. Yeah,
check it out. What he's saying is unbelievable, and then we create community by taking that inner rhythm that we have, that our breathing and our heartbeat and, us going to sleep, waking up, the internal rhythms of us, biorhythms, I suppose you could call them,
yeah,
but we communicate that to other people. You play a groove and then I feel your groove, and your groove is individual to you. It's like it's your statement of being, which is what he said. This is why I'm fired up, because like I said before we started, I had that interview yesterday with Roland, and I thought, I'm talking to a percussionist, one of the great percussionists tomorrow, and I'm going to be able to go on and say my opinion all over his interview. So, but it's the thing is that this is what it's about, isn't it? This is what it's about. This it's the love, isn't it?
it's the love. You said this when we first spoke. It's about there's a yeah, love is in the air. Love is in the air. Can't
Yeah.
believe you just did that.
Do it.
But
Love is in the
it's
air, every sight and every sound.
oh dear. It's yeah. Back to the sort of. I mean, again, you cover so much ground.
Yeah.
It's like the sort of problem solving is a beautiful thing. Like every session I walk into, I'm like, I want to try and one, I want, well, actually, selfishly, one, I want to get the euphoria, for want of a better word. Yeah, I want
There it is.
to.
There it
There it
is.
is
The
again.
thumbs up
There's the
again.
thumb.
I, I don't think that's got anything to do with you. I think that's the great spirit in the sky actually showing that you've said the right thing. That is it. That it's the desire to get to that euphoric state. It's brilliant stuff. So I'm getting so inspired at the moment. I've done too many interviews this week. I've been with too many brilliant people, and I'm on a roll. I just love it. Carry on. I'll try not to say anymore. Just carry on. Ignore me.
It's that it's the fun of it, the euphoria, the adrenal drop, whatever the hell it is, that all the things that go on, and the problem solving. And there was another element to. Oh yeah, no, but I was going to say the funny thing is to kind of comment on what you said. It's like when you're not doing that thing and when you're not getting that charge. So you might be doing the thing, and you will have experienced this, a million musicians, a day of rehearsing, a day of working on something. It's not coming together. What's going on? We just can't get it together. The magic isn't in the air,
Mm,
or the maths aren't working, whichever way you choose to see music being made.
mm,
Bit of both, really. The
mm,
communication skills, all of that is falling. But in your hope, and you're going, man, we're in this beautiful studio, wherever it is, doing this thing. We're trying to create this bit of magic, and it's just not there. Tomorrow we come back, it's there. Maybe only for 16 bars, but it comes. Like anything in life, too much of a good thing. I always think about this one. Too much of a good thing, you wouldn't recognize when it's either good or bad. You need the down, I'm sure you get my point. You need the
mm,
downtime, you need the learning, you need the working through solving that problem, which is why I was trying to connect those dots to get to those 16 bars, that take, that whole
mm,
tune, those lyrics, that rhythm, that thing that you like. Man, I was practicing this for 2 months trying to get this thing. Now I can't do it today, whatever that's about.
mm.
I can't
Yeah.
do it the way I wanted it. It's not sounding how I thought it would sound. All of these endless problems of being in the studio, if we're talking mainly about the
Mm,
studio world, like, why doesn't the kit sound how I thought it was? Well, you're going to have to solve that problem. And on it goes. Wrong mics, wrong hands, wrong heads, wrong brain. Um, yeah, life is about beautiful moments, really, isn't it? It's like, again, if you have beautiful moments continually, you were constantly, I was going to say something really, really bad. I shouldn't say that. If you yeah, if it's amazing all the time, you wouldn't know when you wouldn't know anything else. You'd just be walking around in a bubble. Wouldn't that be amazing for everyone? But that life is not like that. But to know that those things are available is my point, I think. To know that those beautiful moments are available, and you don't necessarily have to take drugs or drink or do anything necessarily extreme to get them, if you have a passion for music
mm,
or art or football or whatever it is, any action, wood chopping, carving, whatever it is you do, there'll be those beautiful days or that beautiful 5 minutes where you forgot the world. Music is my temple, my meditation. It's not there every day. It's like what people talk about meditation. I'm going off on one now, but people talk about meditation. It takes a long time to get to a place where you can kind of dial in. And the number one thing is to come back to your breath all the time. And I do it when I practice. Practice is my meditation. It sometimes takes me half an hour before I realize that half an hour is gone. I'm still thinking about I was going to glue that thing and fix that shelf and do, oh, I've got to be at this thing tomorrow. Oh, I've got this. But you just get these little windows of just a moment of tranquility, and they're gorgeous, and they're to be coveted and loved and treasured and respected. And the rest of the time, you're problem solving other things, but it's just day to day. It's the tea ceremony. It's the Japanese tea ceremony. It's normal life. It's normal things. But occasionally, in my world, in music, in rhythm, I get the odd day where I have just the most amazing 20 minutes or something of just I'm gone. I'm in another world, and I suppose what I'm trying to say is that I know that is now there, and I knew that was there quite a long time ago in my early 20s. I was seeing everyone else doing everything they could to get there with every conceivable drug that was known to man at that time. And me and a couple of other people were like, I just don't want to be out of it to get that. I know it exists. I don't, maybe this is a bit of an idealistic view of making music, but I kind of realized it was there if I worked hard, listened. Oh my God, every musician who knows talks about listening, and it is one of the most valuable tools is those. Sitting there, sometimes I'm not playing, but I'm going, oh my God, the room is igniting with energy. And then I'm lucky enough to be in the room when that's happening, and I'm lucky enough to then offer something to this party. Hopefully I'll offer, if the insecurity doesn't get the better of me, I'll step up and I'll start playing my instrument. And when that works and everyone turns around and gives you a smile, one of the best drugs I've known, I have to tell you.
Have you got a memory of a session you've done where that wasn't happening and then something happened and it did happen? And have you ever been able to establish? I don't think have you ever been able to establish certain things that make it happen? I mean, because often
That's
producers are
a
there; they're supposed to be there to try and make this happen. That's one of the things
yeah,
they're there
yeah.
for. So, can you tell us some stories in your extensive experience where it wasn't happening and then it happened?
That's a very good question. I've drawn a blank, but I think this I think I would equate it to anything else. A good producer might sort of, yeah, good producers doing the very delicate juggling act, keeping the client happy, keeping the engineer fueled and watered and clear-headed, and getting the best. If it's not often these days the a group of musicians in a room doing a session. It's 9 times out of 10 it's either
Yeah.
or one by one. But if we were putting that scenario together, take a break, go outside, play some table tennis,
Mm.
go for a walk. There'll be recreational drugs. There'll be go and have a coffee. There'll be should we just drop this one? I mean, I think it's mechanical. I don't think there's necessarily not really giving you much of a answer here, but I think it's like anything else. Okay, it just isn't working. We're not getting it.
Mm.
Maybe you go and reference something. A lot of
Mm.
referencing goes on in sessions. A lot of listening. Whether people would admit it, listening to great records that are happening at the time or records from 40 years ago. What is it that makes that? That's kind of what we're aiming for. That's the vibe we were going for. What isn't sounding right? Change. I mean, change the room. If your
Mm.
kid's having a meltdown, change the room. If you've raised children and they're having a tantrum, one of the simplest tactics is find another room, make it safe and secure for them, and put them in it, and just give them 5 minutes. Just put them out of the studio space because there's potentially a lot of pressure when you're in a studio, especially when they've got a
I,
producer.
I I think that's where you're now hitting on the thing because I think what I found was
Hmm.
that if you're playing a gig and you're in front of the audience make this a lot easier because one of the things with a gig is
Yeah,
you're very aware that this is the moment and it will be past. So it's either terrible or it's not, but there's not much you can do about it.
it's gone.
And then
Yeah,
the audience are if the audience are willing you along, or maybe they're not, and you think, right, we'll bloody show you lots. But
yeah,
the communication to the audience is a thing. I was reading into Weather Report. They struggled after Heavy Weather. Mr. Gone was a bit of a strange album. They went out live and did 8:30, and then they went back into the studio to do Night Passage. But Night Passage is in a studio, but with an audience.
that's
And
right.
you could hear it just when you put that on suddenly, and then the follow-up one after that, the Weather Report one, is all studio. And I always felt that was really clinical. Credible production, credible play, but very clinical. But Night
Mhm.
Passage is alive. It just sounds
It's
and
amazing
so
record. Yeah,
when you go into a studio, I think a lot of it is trying to get that feeling of being in the moment. But of course, it's not, because everything's under the microscope and everything can be done a million times. You sat
That's
there
a
playing.
a
You
whole
got you got
section, yeah.
and people don't realize this when you're in a band, you go to do a demo for your own band, but you're the client, so you'll say what you want and what you don't want, and that engineer will just do whatever you want. But when you're working for a label, there's like three people looking at you, going, "Is he gonna do it? Is he gonna do it?"
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
uh,
all of the build up. Like if you get, as you get more experienced and more known, I started getting, oh, he's the guy, or not, he's the guy.
yeah.
There's many of us, but I'm supposedly the guy, and on this, oh, we've called Miles in because he played on blah blah's record.
And also, you're charging a fee, and business-wise, you want that fee to go up. And the more they're paying you, the more
Oh,
you're
let's
the
not go
guy.
there.
But no, this
Yeah.
it's totally right. It's
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
if you are good, then you get a reputation to be good, and then you're charging more, and
Mm.
all that thing's going on. And so when you walk in after all that, that's a terrible pressure, isn't it, to go, oh, I can't
It's
redo
immense.
that, blah blah blah.
Yeah, it's immense, and it's a very, very fine. I mean, we're getting some detail here. Very fine dance you do, because you've got to kind of walk in that room. You've been hired like any other business. The plumber walks in. You hope to God this person knows what they're doing. That they're going to sort that leak that's pissing all over your kitchen. Please be the right person for this job. And it's the same with me. I'm walking in, and there's an element of reputation precedes you, and then there's unfortunately the glamour that can be associated. Like, oh, well, he worked with, so he must be amazing. And we've all heard of stories of people who've got themselves quite far up the ladder, who arguably are borderline charlatans, but they just keep getting the gigs, and it's a lot of it. That's the music business. That's the art world. There's a lot of that. But time and time again, eventually, if you're good, as many of my friends and people ahead of me have said, if you're good, it doesn't stay quiet that long. If you're good and you're serious about what you do,
Mm.
people find out, and you build up. And reputation is everything. It takes often a very long time to get it to a really great place. Again, in any given game, and it doesn't take much, sadly, like the rotten apple, for it to very quickly be tarnished. If you make one mistake, you challenge somebody in the wrong way, or seem to have challenged somebody in the wrong way. You have to be so careful. And I'm sure I've made several mistakes, faux pas, said the wrong thing at the wrong time to people. Generally, as a session player, I was quite low key, and I really did the sort of, I hope my hands do the talking, and to some degree, I think that helped. My seriousness with which I brought to the table, and my willingness to learn. What am I trying to say? Well, yeah, just you're doing, yeah, you're doing a dance. You're walking into a room with an artist who, if they're quite young, they might be quite insecure, or they might be quite old and they're still insecure.
Mm.
At the end of the day, they've got a huge reputation to uphold. And it's quite a thing that they've hired you, even if they've done it through their management, through the producer, through the engineer, and they've all recommended me or whoever they've hired. At the end of the day, they are, they're allowing you into their space to hear their guide vocal on this track, even though their persona is, so you're kind of you're in the underground club at this point. And there's an element of kind of recognizing that, and showing marked respect for that. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Mm.
don't worry, I totally get it. That's a guide vocal. I see what you're doing here. Let me listen to the track. I'm sort of cutting now to just how I would approach the session. And as a percussionist, as a conga player, for anyone who wants to, one way of, there are no hard and fast rules, but one way I tend to listen to a piece of music, if it was standard instrumentation, drums, bass, guitar, keyboards, piano, whatever it is, especially I say this a lot, the piano and the guitar department are where I have to be, for me, sonically with congas, a little careful. I'm obviously listening to the rhythm of what the drums and the bass are doing, and maybe a rhythm guitar if we're going sort of simple stuff here. But I'm also listening to the harmony of I know what my point is here, harmony of, say, the guitar and a piano. And I know a lot of percussionists back in the day who were, some of them who would come from a very particular sort of type of school, wouldn't necessarily be thinking about that. They're just thinking about the rhythm that they play and that they want to bring to the table because this is what I do. I started listening to music going, I think I need to adapt. Listen, if I play that conga part and I want to play four congas because I want to be Mr. Clever, and I love the melody of what four congas do. But a lot of time, four congas in a session, it's quite a voice. That's four different four fundamental different notes and then many others. So you're already clouding the mid-range of keyboards
Mm.
and guitars if you start playing the same melody as a piano player. My point being that I would dial into that and then I would tune the drums to that, not necessarily to what they should be tuned as, you
Mm.
know, C sharp or C that a lot of people like to tune a conga to, and on it goes. I'm not saying anything that's rocket science or revolutionary here, but I noticed that producers and engineers really liked that I was kind of like, hang on, no, hang on, let me just, what's that note? You know, let me get, do you know what? I'm going to bench that. I'm not going to play that pattern like that because that note is just absolutely getting in the way. I think what I'm trying to say is that I showed a real a willingness to learn, and that I'm in their world. They need me to facilitate what it is. I wanted to bring my chops. I wanted to bring my clever ideas, but you know, I ended up doing so many sessions, and I'm so not the only person who said this. In fact, I quoted this way back with Alex Acuna. The most used instrument was this shaker, but you do it beautifully. You do it well. You do it with passion, and you're happy to facilitate what it is that they want. They can't. You know, no one else in the room has studied percussion like you have. They go, oh, I've heard a Santana record. And I love that beat that goes like this. Can you recreate that for me? I can. That's quite something. And it's quite, when I do that, one, you're going to have to watch me put that together and you're going to not understand how I'm doing it because it's like, why is that? How does that? You know, there's a lot,
Yeah.
percussion is different to drums. Drums, it's like one instrument. It's not one instrument as a thing, but it, boom, bap, it's all working together. Percussion, I have to go 1 minute, grab it, find the right tambourine. Okay, this tambourine that doesn't, you know, cover cat, doesn't hide that hi-hat and doesn't hide that shaker. Yeah, I'm looking at frequencies, I suppose, is what the point I'm trying to say. And I'm also got to make me on maybe 6 to 8 takes on average sound like one machine. And I've got to kind of get them there. And then they're only hearing the shaker and they're going, but I want the Santana record that sounds like this. And I'm going, there's mechanics. I got to build it. It won't come at you in one thing. And I think if I go all the way down that route, I'm actually going to cover the piano part. And I'm really trying to listen to the singer, which was the last thing I was going to say about that. I'm trying to cover a lot of ground quickly here, but like, you know, the number one thing I did many years ago, again, sort of, I Dominic to thank for this actually. I made a record called Tribute, and the first track I recorded was one of Dominic's tunes called Cantat, and I'd never sung anything before. I am not a singer, but I thought, Christ, all my career up to this point, I've been mostly doing singer-songwriter records. You know, when it came to live and a lot of recordings, and some of the people that a lot of my career
Mm.
sort of started with. And I'm ashamed to admit it, and I know there's many other musos like me out there not really dialing into the melody, not really listening to the lyrics of the song. And yet I'm in a studio playing on somebody's precious, beautiful song that they've crafted and slaved over. And there's me going, yeah, check out my. I sort of woke up and went, I need to be supportive of this. How am I going to learn how to do that properly? So I forced myself to go and sing something. No lyrics, it's just a melody. And it's something that Dominic had done. He just done I think it's two guitars and his vocal. And it's a beautiful track. So when we first met, that's one of the first things he played. And I went, I love that. One day I'm going to record that. So I re-recorded it, and he ended up playing the guitar, which is great. But I sang the melody, and that my life changed as a session musician when I did that. I sang the song, and I would highly recommend that to anyone who's got all the chops, got all the facility, wants to get involved in making music. If you're there to provide for a singer songwriter or whoever the lead is, whoever's story it is that you're trying to tell, if you can be bothered, and it's actually fun, maybe go, you know, if you want to get passionate and get in there, get in the nitty gritty and learn about what it is to be a singer, be the front person, what it is when they're up there, all the emotions that are going, all the emotions to singing into the microphone, being in the studio and exposing your heart, getting on a gig and getting up on stage, which is very different to what I do, is getting up on stage, but I can hide behind cymbals, chimes, congas, you know, I can be that guy kind of doing my groovy stuff.
Yeah.
Get up there, understand what you're supporting is, I suppose, you know, after that long ramble, that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah. I
As a
mean,
session player, that's a really important element. Know what
yeah.
you're actually.
I think it's very interesting because the things you're saying are very profound but very simple at the same time. Like that we tend to be insular. We tend to be, you know, I've seen this with students when they're doing a gig, and they are panicking. But what they're panicking about is them
Yeah,
and how they're going to come across and what they're doing. They don't seem to be aware that it's going to be terrible for them if the band's terrible and the song's terrible and the singer like gets panicky because
You got it. Yeah.
and because you didn't do the right thing, and not realizing that it's like a house of cards and everyone's leaning against each other, especially with people aren't that good. They really are a house of cards. They're all leaning on each other, but they're all obsessed with their own self. So there's no structure there. There's no one's locking in. No one's thinking about what is that person playing. Oh, I think their guitar's going out of tune there. What's going to happen? That
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
much more of a
Totally.
live player. So those are the things that I was always very aware of.
You
And
play guitar, right? You play
yeah, I
guitar.
play guitar, yeah, and I
Yeah.
play
So,
bass and keyboards to some extent, and I
oh
produce, you
wow.
see, and
Wow.
the thing you said about the percussion thing is interesting because when you're mixing something or you're working in the studio and you go, oh, we've got to fix this, and then you go, right, I've had an idea, and you sit down and you start working. If there's someone else in the room, and you start moving stuff, and then they go, no, that's not going to work, and I go, hang on, just let me do it. It's going to take me a while to do this, and they go, no, 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 and that's always hard in the studio to
Yeah.
because they want everything straight
Now.
away, and
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
it's going
Yeah.
to take a while to go, look, I'm really going to have to retune this kit, or these things where you have to get back to square one. And
That's
those
yeah.
are I think that's the answer to the question, isn't it? It's those things where you identify the thing that's blocking it, and you have to reset it, and nobody wants to reset it because they're all already in. They've already
You
it's
got it.
the recording studio. Every time I've been in it, it's like I was very aware that someone's paying for it. That's the bottom point.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
the engineer, the people who work in the studio, the engineers, they want to drag it out. They want to push it out to the next day as well. They're like I used to work a lot in Rockfield, and the guys
Yeah.
they're not rushed because they get up every morning and just work it.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to go, oh, should we just add another day on tomorrow and this? But the guy that's paying for it is panicking. Uh,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
what I used to do but
On the
this is the
clock.
only session work I used to do was a little bit down in Rockfield where I was get with his proper session work. I turn up, put my drums. When I first played, I tried to nail a take. It might not be the best take, but it proved I could do it because
To
I could. I
yourself
know
or to them? You
to
mean?
them because
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I noticed if I came in and I started to play, so it'd be like we're going to do that track. I go, yeah, I know that track. Yeah, I've got it all nailed. If you've got it nailed, yeah, I've got know it really well.
Yeah.
And then I'd sit down and then I'd play it, and it was like I could see them going, he knows the song, he's going to play it, it's all fine. You see them go, oh my god, and then they let you go wrong for hours on end. But if you like that at the beginning, I
You
don't know
got
what the
it. You
song
got it.
is. I don't know what. Oh, how's this
Yeah.
one going? What sort of groove do you want me to play? It's like if I didn't know
That's
what the
really,
group, I'd
really
just go,
important, actually. Yeah,
yeah,
that's really important. If obviously there are sessions where it's completely cold.
yeah,
You have no note, you have no idea. Hey man, Mark, can you get there tomorrow tonight? In 2 hours.
yeah.
I mean, okay, what is it? I'll tell you when you get here. Sort of. There's a lot of that. Not as much as there used to be with that. But yeah, just as a mark of respect to the artist, if somebody says, look, or perhaps you've been working with somebody and you've been doing these songs, but actually they haven't been recorded yet, and they want to go in, know what you're walking into. Yeah, there's little
Or if you don't know it, what I would do is fake it. I would
fake it.
pretend like
Yeah.
I'm really confident. I know what I'm doing, and I go, yeah, I've got this drum beat, and it's like that, just straight down the line. Put a
You
bit
know
of that
what?
in. I'll be like
Yeah,
that talking
totally.
through, and they go, "Oh, he's all right. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's
Totally.
doing."
I mean, I fake it. Maybe you might need to fake your confidence, but you've touched on
Not
something.
not fake the play,
No,
fake the
exactly. You
confidence
wouldn't
that
be
you're
able
going to
to.
be okay. It's all
You wouldn't
right.
be able to. Exactly.
You know, you
Play.
know, you know what made me learn this? There's a session guy called Jamie Little. Do you know Jamie Little?
I know the name.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
When I was playing with Ian Parker, I was Ian Parker's drummer, so we're out on tour all the time playing, and I couldn't do some dates because I was doing some clinics. So he goes, "I'll get another drummer in," and he was lucky. He rang up Jamie who's from Birmingham, but Jamie's a big session player,
Yeah.
plays with Ronan Keating and people like that,
Yeah.
and they booked Jamie, and I was a little bit like, "Oh my god, if they've gone and got Jamie in." So I go off and do my things, and when I jump back into the tour, I get on the bus and I said, "So Ian, what was Jamie like on those gigs?" And Ian turned around and went, "Oh, he was amazing." That feeling. I was going,
Oh
was
yeah.
he?
I've been
God,
there. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, he was amazing. Why? What was he so good? And I remember my mate goes, where he said, we get the gig, he was already there. Right? He said, we walk in, he set
There you
his
go.
drums up,
Yeah.
but he's not playing them like you. They're just set up there. And we go, Jamie, and then he walks in. He said he'd got some McDonald's and coffee. He said he gives us. He said, I think you guys probably need a coffee after all that. He said, gave us a coffee, and then he sat down. We played it. He knew all the stuff inside out. And what I found, what the thing about playing it, it was like he knew the stuff. The actual playing ability, they didn't talk. It
No.
it was like Jamie had just come in and
Mm,
calmed everybody down and made them feel confident and made them feel happy and and
yeah.
and, and made it easy. Was a resource in the moment. And I remember thinking, I'm just a big curmudgeon that moans about everything, that blasts my chops through the sound. I mean, I just suddenly realised I must be a right pain in the ass to everybody, be what I'm like.
But you
And
were attuned to that. You know, if you that's how I'm sure you weren't as bad as you say, but
now, but I'm
you were attuned,
exaggerating
you
it.
were attuned to that. You know, I had exactly the same examples with a particular drummer friend of mine, a great drummer called Aaron Amoon, who played with John Martin for many, many years. He was kind of a bit of a mentor to me. He probably doesn't even know that, or maybe he does, but just phenomenal. On a similar tip, one of the first tours I ever did with him, we'd been rehearsing a lot, and then he gets to the sound check, and like every young musician, you're looking at the chops, you're looking at the facility, we could go on about it forever. He sits in a nice, I don't know, it was like whatever, I can't remember where the gig was. It was like probably the first sound check of the tour, and he just does the classic bad, bad over the PA, and I'm sitting in the middle of the room going, he's doing nothing, but everything's happening. His command, his confidence. Now he's got a lot of chops. He played for Manu Katch's band. He was like Manu called him and he played drums for Manu. So quite a compliment indeed. Um, but even if
I,
he had
I,
half the
the,
chops he had, if something I wanted to sort of say actually is that if your time is amazing, I mean, we're getting to maybe a different
yeah,
territory.
no, this is,
But if
well,
your
I
time is
know
amazing, you get half the chop. You know where I'm going. You have
the
half the
trouble is
chops
we're both sort of drummers. You're a drummer percussionist, I'm a drummer, and I spoke to
and
Roland
guitarist and
yesterday.
bass
He's a
player and
drummer, and when I start talking to drummers, it's like everything we say, we know it, but it's so profound, and
yeah,
it's like I used to be really good friends. I'm not so much now. I'd love to get him on the channel with a drummer called Mark Schulman. Mark Schulman drums. His last gig was Pink. Before that, it's Cher.
yeah,
He's
he's a
played
phenomenal
on.
drummer. Yeah,
He's a phenomenal drummer,
yeah,
and playing on absolutely everything,
yeah.
top end American session drummer. And I said to him once, I said, how did you become such a good session drummer? He said, well, I got the gig with Foreigner, but I was just a player. And then he said, Jonathan Cain from, was it Journey or something like that, was forming a band and he was auditioning. So I got the audition. He said, I go down to
Um,
the audition. I said, I start playing and Jonathan Cain stops it. He says, Mark, you're rushing a little bit. And he went, okay, yeah, starts it up. And he stops, he goes, you're rushing. And he starts up again. And then as he's playing, Jonathan Cain stops and he puts his hand into his bag. He pulls out a metronome and he threw it at Mark, hit him in the chest. And he said, go away and come back when you can play in time. And Mark said he went home and he was so upset. It's the drummer's biggest fear, isn't it? We got all our chops. You could play the black page. You got all your paradiddles down. Dub bass drums 250
yeah,
BPM.
yeah,
But the time, because it's not. What can you do to make it better? What can you do? And
yeah, man. It's
he
huge.
said to me, he said he sat at home and he thought, what shall I do? And he decided. He said, what I should do is what he told me to do. I'll learn to play in time with this metronome. And he said so he stopped all his practice and he said he would come get up in the morning every morning for an hour, stick it on at like 25 BPM and just clap, clap, crotchets like that. And he said he did that for a year. And I said, and we were actually on a drum clinic and he was setting up. And I said, and what did that do, Mark? And he went, this. And he just went, cat, and I went, oh, bloody hell.
Yeah, it's as old. It's ridiculous. It's as old as time. You took when you were doing the Dominic interview. He talked about Vinny.
Yeah.
But you know, just that, just the care, thought, emotion in that, the understanding the speed, the time, the feel, what the sound you're going to make, all of it. I mean, it's just a million. I was going to say Peter Erskine did an interview many years ago on one of his great sort of educational DVDs, which I watched endlessly. One of my favorite drummers of all time. And he's like that whole thing. You've probably seen it where he talks about going in and doing a Kellogg's advert. And he could do all this stuff and he could try and paint all the pictures, but actually just you don't have to get all the bass hits. You don't have to clock everything. You just have played through the tune, but played great time, like you said you did, and others have done, where you just go, I don't actually know the song, but let me just play, which is a lot of what I would say I do. I go, well, I clearly don't know the arrangement. I'm not a reader, so is that all okay? But can I just go in and I think what I'll do is I'll just play shaker through it. Now, take it if you want, and I'll just go through the song and I'll sort of hear what's happening, where the feel of it is. So I don't know where the stops are. I don't know what's going to happen, but I show them the same way as you were saying. I showed them that I know what time is. And if I missed anything, they're still marveling at the fact that I can play in time with the drum machine or the rest of the track that I've never heard before. And that's not because I'm amazing, but it's just because I've worked very hard at time, like realizing, being exposed so many times when I was young. Hey, you're doing some really interesting stuff, but can we just solo Miles a second? All my grace notes on the congas were not as smooth as the whole notes you were hearing. I got exposed to a very good friend of mine who I'd really like to mention, Danny Cummings, who I think you should interview if he's up for it.
Mm.
And he could tell you some great stories. He's kind of like a generation ahead of me. We're very, very close, very good friends. He was my benchmark, as one of my percussion heroes, certainly of the people here. And he put me up for sessions, and very quickly I realized he could see something in me. That's why he was prepared to put me up. I feel honored that I was the guy that he would put up for a lot of the session work because he saw my passion. But I very quickly realized through a couple of producers who were great musicians, they're going, yeah, I can see you know what's going on, but I think you need to put a bit of time into your feel, your grace notes, go and shed. I think there's probably every drummer, rhythmist
It's
that
what you're saying is horrific. It's horrific to me. And because the thing is that I had this and
yeah,
I
yeah.
have it now, and
Yeah.
I'm aware of
Oh,
it. When,
well,
when, when I when
never
I got
ending, never
when I
ending.
when I got the gig with Robert, I'm out. Then suddenly I'm out for 2, 3 years playing with Robert night after night, night after night, doing 20,000, 30,000, 40,000.
Yeah.
And a mate of mine came to see the gig and they went, "Oh, you're loads better now, Andy." I said, "Am I?" And he went, "Oh, yeah." Because you just couldn't be playing in that environment, just playing straight. Most of it was pretty straight.
Yeah.
And then for many years after that, it had gone. I could hear it had gone. And then as I've not been played so much, it's the grace notes. I can hit the two and the two and the
Yeah.
four and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
those little grace notes, and I know now it's just the more you think about it, and the more the tension comes in. And when lockdown happened,
Yeah.
I sat at 20 BPM for like about a month every day because I could,
Yeah.
and that sorts it out, because
Yeah.
it's like getting it in line with your breath and getting, but I'm terrible
It's
at the moment.
totally, man. It's not impossible, and it's not a big mystery. It's just a little bit of shedding, like you would shed
Yeah,
anything and everything else. Because I do think, sort of almost back to what you wanted your thumbnail to be about. Maybe there are some mysteries about the session world, and there probably are some, but a lot of it's mechanics, a lot of it's preparation, and being aware of things. It's being aware. It's being self-aware. It's like and not. Sometimes you might. I mean, thankfully I haven't been sacked too many times. Once I was sacked, I hadn't even played a note, but the whole band was sacked because the artist walked in and went, "I don't like them," and just we didn't even play a note. They just decided they didn't like us, so we were out. So it could be as ridiculous as that. You haven't even played, and suddenly you've not got the gig. Or you play and they just decide they don't like something about the way you look or whatever. But thankfully, that hasn't happened too many times. But it's all mechanics. It's like doing the work and being humble, being if a producer sort of and you respect them because they're like, wow, they know they've played with some serious
mm,
people, and they're kind of politely saying, look, we'll get through this, but just as a little heads up, I think you need to kind of work on your time a little bit. That would be really helpful. Don't think it'd take you too long. I mean, it's gold dust. And not to go, that's it, it's over, or what are you talking
it's
about,
Mark
man?
Schulman. You go home and do what they say,
He did what
like
he,
a
yeah.
robot. You go, right, that's what I'm doing. Then
That's
thank you
that's
for
what I'm
that.
doing. You know
A
what? I've
gift.
learned something.
A
Yeah,
gift.
totally.
The world's trying to tell me what I need to do, and this is quite simple. I can get this sorted out. And
Yeah.
and the thing is, chatting to Roland and chatting to you, I knackered this hand up. I can't play at the moment, and it's not a
Oh,
pulled muscle. It's pretty serious. I can't. I played some jazz. It was on the Christmas show I did, and when we did 500 Miles High, I was so tense and stressed because inside
oh,
I'm going, oh, we're playing 500 Miles High, and it was a joke. I mean, I was singing it and singing it badly, but we had to play it. And
right.
in that, I can remember I was playing and I was really into the music, but this hand was tense. And I
Hey,
thought, I'll just push your way through because we're filming it. And if you watch it, at a certain point, I just suddenly stopped playing, and it's because that hand went pang, and I've had
Oh,
a
mate.
pain since then, and that's like since the beginning of December. So I'm hoping this will go away, but I can play with this pain, but I've got
Right.
to take the tension out of it.
Yeah.
And so, chatting to you today and chatting to Roland, I thought I need to go back and rather than not practicing, which is what I'm not doing at the moment. I don't want to face it. I don't want to play. I'm all rubbish. My hand hurts, and you've played really
Mm.
tense. You're supposed to be a drum teacher, and I know everything about drum technique. I'll be honest. I know all about what's going on in this hand, and yet
Right.
I'm still doing. Because it's emotional. It's not about me knowing the right technique. It's about I got stressed and your body
Right.
tensed up,
Right.
and so I thought I've got to go back in and just find the relaxation, the breathing in and out, take the pressure out of it. Don't try and play fast. Don't try and play anything clever, and work on those spaces in between the notes. So the spaces are felt,
Huge.
you know.
Huge.
And I've got that from talking to you, who's a master musician, because you can't do those sessions without. I know you're being humble, but I know what you can do, and I know I struggled so often in that environment. It's a really tough thing to be a drummer on the other side of that glass, trying to play, and they're listening to every little bit you do, and you go in three snares in, and you just went, I didn't hit that snare as hard as the rest. I wonder if
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
noticed that. I bet they
Yeah.
did that. Oh, I did another one because I'm not on the ball now. You're not get in the moment, and you get. Oh my God, I've
Yeah,
done it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh
That is
no, I've got
exactly
to.
what's happening in the mind. And you know what? It does never end. And there is something evil about that and something beautiful about that. And that's what makes music, like many other art forms, beautiful. It's like you can keep refining it and taking it to an incredible level. You know, you're doing this, you're just aligning everything. And when you're doing that with fellow musicians, it's even more amazing.
Yeah,
For drummers, it's the bass player conversation nine times and vice versa. It's that beautiful link, that you're kind of you either speak about or you don't talk about at all. It's just happening, but it's just there. And then it's lovely when another group of musicians come in and go, man, you guys are like, wow. And you're like, oh yeah. So I didn't really, a particular friend of mine, probably one of my closest friends, Scott Firth, he's bass player in Pill, but he's in our band and he's a fusion guy as well. He's a jazz guy, but but we're just inherently locked. And he's a ridiculous guitarist as well. And his time is amazing. And we just have a thing. And that's talked about time and time. Every generation talks about it, that beautiful sort of link of time. When you share that with another musician, and that goes on exponentially, and then another musician, and we're all looking at each other going, we're just going bat, boom, but everything is just sitting the way it's kind of not many things as magical as that. It's like, watching a great Brazilian or whatever, football team score the most incredible, majestic goal. There's something just
yeah. I know a
not just
bass
the
player.
Brazilians, there's
I,
all,
he's a
but you
jazz
know what I
bass
mean.
player called Tom Hill, and he's a monster bass. He's also a voiceover artist. He used to be the
Oh,
voice
wow.
of Tony the Tiger on Frosties, and
Oh
he's
my
been in
God.
films. He's an amazing bloke, loads of charisma.
Yeah.
But he's a great bass player. And I was doing a jazz gig with him, and I was playing away, and he starts laughing. He's like laughing like this and like this, and I look around and I go, "Oh," and he goes, Andy, because he's a deep American accent voiceover. I go, Andy, you're slowing down. And
Oh,
and I thought, my God, I'm slowing down, but he's not.
yeah,
And
right.
another bass player
Ooh.
would just followed me down. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
realized because he wasn't, and he was his own time, I was getting pulled up by him
yeah,
because, and because, so my point is, brilliant musicians around you will actually grab you and pull you up.
yeah,
If you've,
totally.
because I did an interview with Paul Wertico, and he
Oh,
used to
wow.
play with
Yeah.
Jacko. He did some album, he did a
Oh, I
recordings. They
heard.
said they
Yeah.
haven't been released, but he recorded with Jacko. And I said, what was it like? He goes, well, you said you basically, so had the headphones on. I had Jacko's sound in my ears. And then as soon as I started playing, it was like Jacko just picked me up
Yeah.
and carried me like,
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It just
Oh my.
carried me
Oh,
along, and you couldn't go wrong. Couldn't go
yeah.
wrong because you got
Yeah.
Jacko kicking you up the arse.
Yeah.
And the thing is to end this, because I think we're coming to the end, and I think I need to come back and talk about this as a separate video, because this has been much more interesting, just going through your career and getting your take on it, and just seeing the simplicity of what the job is. And it's in the end, I've thought all music's the same. It's not session. It's just the fact that the band's formed just that day rather than being in the room. That's all it is. It's the same task that we all
Quite
deal with.
often.
There's no special thing about it, really. It's just you
Yeah,
turn up, try and make the music sound as best you can with the personalities in the room, and you're aware of the personalities, and you're aware of the playing the music right. That's quite simple,
yeah,
but profound. But all these skills that you've developed over the years, and so many other musicians developed, they are a little bit under threat at the moment, and that the requirement of that from the
yeah.
industry, because people, I felt the industry has just had a slow process of realizing that the audience will are happy with machines. Because the
Mm,
most bizarre thing is the drum machine never got a purchase in music where the drums didn't matter so much. It got a purchase in dance music where the
mm.
drums used to matter so much. And so that machine-like thing for popular music has just it's just grabbed hold. And I don't know. I what do we do about it? I mean, what's the feeling in the industry? Because I know the work's not there like it was before.
No, it's not. No,
Budgets
I
aren't
think
there like they were before, are they?
no, no. I mean, you can look anywhere. I saw a great. It was very brave of him. A lot of people are talking about it. Rob Harris, Jamiroquai's guitar. Well, he's done many other things, but that's what he's known, well known for.
Mm,
You may have seen it. He did a pretty brave kind of expose as to where he was very honest, brutally honest about where the session world is at. I think most session players, there is work out there. There's library work. There are still bands working, but we all know what's happening. I mean, it's a huge topic, but everyone's got a laptop. If you've got a
mm,
good microphone and a good interface and the wherewithal and a bit of passion, there's a hell of a lot you can do. And we're sort of entering in a lot of why I approached you as well, because you talked about it when we spoke on the phone. You were talking about the community. It is maybe more of a generation, our generation, a few below us, and when I say below, I mean younger than us, and maybe some advanced. There is still a lot of passion for making music, as there is in a younger generation. There is incredible music, beautiful, amazing music being made by the younger generation that we're all going, how'd you get that good that young, right? That's one element of it,
mm,
but also just some incredible music. It is all incredibly easy. It is all coming out of a box. The aesthetic is more important than it's ever been. Shoegazing isn't really a thing anymore. It's so, you're an artist now, you have everything. You can do it all. Um, it's like sprinting. I don't know why we just keep getting faster. When does it stop?
mm.
When does it stop? I don't know if it does, but I feel like there's a sort of maybe two worlds happening here a little bit. This is why your channel's really good and many like it.
Mm.
Real musicians still wanting to hang on to the art, the beauty of being in a room together and making music. It's the only way most of us musicians, if we're serious and can get out and do it physically, mentally, are going to probably end up with that's where most of our living is going to be if there is a gig. I mean, it's a dark, sad sort of subject, but if there is a gig to go to, because a lot of venues are closing down. I heard about your brilliant little venue that you did that thing with your friend, the place is it near where you live? There's a nice
Mm.
venue you're talking about. That sounds fantastic. We need more of that. But there'll be so many musicians wanting to play and not many places to play, and everyone trying to cram in this little live is really the one thing we have left because
I
AI.
I'm developing a thesis, and I'm going to put it forth at the end of this video and see what
Well,
you think, right? The 20th century music changed fundamentally. It changes because recording was invented. And so rather than music being communal and you go down your local pub and your mate plays music or you play piano or you go to church, sing songs and all that,
mm,
suddenly the industry was around a completely new thing is that you could record stuff and bang it out there and suddenly people could have music in their home on a record. That creates the music industry. And what they didn't bank on, it wasn't classical music or light opera or any of those things. Jazz musicians who could improvise could then go into the studio and alter what they did to create records that were specifically designed to be records. And
yeah,
then you start to get people singing close to the mic. You start to get all this. And so
yeah,
suddenly, what you've got in the 20th century, and it's lined up with the film industry, is the idea of the star. And the star goes into a hallowed place, which is the recording studio. And they make these records. They cost lots and lots of money, and nobody knows how to do them. And you buy them, and you listen to Bohemian Rhapsody, and you go, "How that you?" At the time, people go,
magic.
"What have they done? How have they done this? What's going
Yeah,
on?"
black magic. Yeah,
But yeah, so that is 20th century art, and I've
yeah,
decided to call that is the Mount Olympus approach. The 20th century,
Yeah.
suddenly you have this vast communication art, and it's brilliant. Everyone can have music in their home. We can all listen to music, we can partake, but it's all about Mount Olympus. You go to the gig, and the curtains go back, and it's literally like Mount Olympus. The light comes in, the smokes, and the gods come down, and they're all gods, and they're so important, and you're supposed to respect every little hallowed bit of it. And the fact that you've worked with Michael Jackson and Beyonce means a little bit of their stardust magic has brushed up on you, and that makes you special, blah, blah, blah. That's
Yeah.
the 20th century. But the
Oh, dear.
big problem that nobody wants to say is not, it's come from the technology, but it's much more profound than the technology, is that is what's dying.
Yeah.
The Mount Olympus is dying. The gods don't matter anymore. The German pundits going, sitting around going, well, they're all dirty perverts, really, aren't they? I mean, look at that P. Diddy bloke, and they got no talent, really. And,
Oh gosh,
and
I
they
was
make all
laughing,
these
but
films. I aren't interested in making any film. I ain't going to go and see Tom Cruise's latest film. It's like there's no bankable film stars. And now, right, just as that's happening, Hollywood's on fire. I mean, it's on. It couldn't be more poetic. As a metaphor for what's happening, is the
yeah,
place is burning down. No one's interested. The America chucked every celebrity they could to try and get Kamala in, and nobody cared. They just went, "We don't care. Don't care about you, Beyonce." They looked foolish. We don't care. I know you can't say all this because you're in it, but I'll say it. I love Beyonce. I think she's amazing, amazing, talented woman.
oh yeah,
But
yeah,
when she got up on stage and Jennifer Lopez, I could feel people, but they weren't going, "Oh my God, it's Beyonce." We don't care what you think. You've had it. Your day's done. And I think, and I was actually, after I spoke to you on the phone, I came up with it. I thought, this is the problem for the industry, is that those people are very aware that their currency is diminishing.
it's diminishing. Yeah,
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 the artists don't sell albums. Nobody cares anymore about that. Kid can make a track in his bedroom. But the thing is what's going to replace it? What's going to replace it is that it will go back, I think, to an online digital version of what was before. So I think played music will survive, but it will be played by people who want to play music. In terms of the commercial use of music, because now the albums don't matter. So the commercial music is music that's tied to film, it's music that's tied to like the media and stuff like that. That's how you do it. Well,
yeah.
AI will create that.
Mm.
And I could envisage a thing where, because the thing about AI is I'm on Udio, which makes these tracks. And when I'm bored, I go on
I've played with it too. Yeah, yeah,
and I do it for fun.
yeah. To see
And
what it does. Yeah,
and I did a video and I put some of the tracks up and I invented album covers and band names for them, and I really enjoyed it.
yeah, yeah.
And then some of the people were going, "Where's your Udio account?" And I thought, "Oh my God! In the future, what you'll have is you'll have people creating music on AI, and they've done it really well, and it will be." Your music collection will be created by you. Everyone will create their own music collection, and then they will compare their. So we're all going to become the artists. Can I have a listen to your music collection? Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love what you've done there. Send me that track.
Mm.
You
I
know,
was talking to my wife this morning because a friend of mine, Lee Groves, a brilliant producer, sent me a link to, I've forgotten, it's Mikey something, the guy who invented Suno, I think it is, or is the CEO of, and it's a can of worms. Maybe you should just go and have a look at it. But it sort of basically said, I think people are kind of, a bit tired of having to learn to play instruments. It takes so long, all the work involved in it. Whereas what we're creating is this thing that you can just put in a few prompts and away you go. And, everyone's got great taste in music and everyone's got something to say. And I'm like, on one level, I think, well, okay, yeah, well, we can all see where it's going. But really, like, taking the joy and speaking for millions of musicians and artists around the world, that it's a bit boring having to spend all this time learning to be really good at an instrument. It takes so long. Like the Japanese tea ceremony, like being like my friend who is into kendo, that you can only take certain exams, get your belt, your eighth dan belt, generally at a certain age, because it's the life's path, it's the work. It's to show that you did the work to get there. It's the beauty of that. If we all got to the end before we'd barely started, then what? I mean, this is a bit of a metaphor for everything to do with AI, and where it's headed. But that really is a
I don't
conversation for
think
another.
so because the AI is
No?
working so, because it's working so quickly that
Yeah.
everything everyone was saying 2 years ago about it, it's all solved that. So anything you say that it can't do, it will solve.
Well,
And
yeah.
the thing that is
Oh,
really
you mean like,
interesting.
so literally what we're sitting on our hands going, well, it's done everything. Now what? Is that what you mean?
The thing is, AI isn't just going and saying, "Can you do a track that sounds halfway between Weather
No,
Report
it's
and the Ramones?" And then,
it's being
that, which it
lawyer.
will
It's being
do, and then you'll go, "Oh my God, that does sound like Weather Report and the Ramones."
yeah.
And everybody who utilizes it knows that there is a big emptiness of creativity. It'll come
Yeah.
up with a melody, but the melody hasn't got the magic of a human creating a melody. The drum beats are there, but they don't quite groove like a proper. I know all
Yet.
that's,
Yet. Yeah.
but the thing is, what I'm saying is that the streaming services, people like Spotify, already they're making AI stuff. They're putting it in. They get all the money for it. Nobody's noticing it, right? So that's going on. And I think what will happen in the end is that people will make their own music. You will have a profile. You will log into the profile,
Mm.
and some people will make music that travels. So you'll have hit records that have been created in that way. This will happen, but
Yeah,
it
I
doesn't
agree.
negate the fact that people will still want to play instruments. They're going to want to play instruments, but
I
there
hope
is
so.
no interest. There's no industry to play those instruments in it anymore. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. When the Beatles came along, before then, if you wanted to make popular music, what you did is you had a large band, a big band, and everybody in that group could sight read, and you played your clarinet, and you knew how to do that. And there was an arranger, there was a writer, there was a singer, and there was a whole bunch of skills that existed in that big band. Your dad was a part of that.
Mm.
And as soon as the Beatles came out, those skills died. And all those guys are sat there moaning about the Beatles like we're moaning about AI, right? Because so
Yeah.
it kept going, but suddenly the Beatles were like, well, we write our own songs and we're cheeky, we got the personalities, but we don't have to be good looking, we don't have to be able to sight read, we don't have to play, you
Mm.
know.
Mm.
And so the whole thing changes.
Mm.
And I think what we're about to go through is the biggest change, which will be the death of Mount Olympus for musicians. So
Mm.
we're going to go back to just being like folk musicians. We'll be playing.
I agree with you. Yeah, there will be like it'll be like you. I mean, the court jester. Not that's. I'm being extreme. I'm being a
Yeah.
bit facetious, maybe. But yeah, there was a heyday of being session players where you were earning 5 grand a day. And
But
more.
I think you'll still
Depending
be
on
able
the
to earn
year.
the money out of it. You see, because the thing is what I've realised doing my channel is that I'm sat doing my channel. If you came down to see me with your congas and we sat down and played, right, and I videoed it, I'm going to do at least 2,000 views, and I'm probably going to do 10, 15,000 views. 15,000 people will see it, right? And
Yeah,
if you sat on Rick Beato and did that, you might be doing 1 million views. So actually, there is a thing out there where
yeah,
people playing real instruments is a thing and it's wanted, and
I
it's
agree.
out on because people are fascinated. But I believe that they're fascinated because they can see it's this communal thing again.
Yeah,
And I just wonder whether the echo of the computers, which means everybody is buffing up their performances on YouTube too much, that's what you got to let go of. So the thing
yeah.
that
You
struck me
touched
was
on
that,
that before. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So if you take like the Snarky Puppy with Corey Henry, that's had 10 million views, turned
yeah,
them into millionaires. And what are they selling? They're selling Corey Henry doing an incredible solo. And you're selling the moment, and people who don't quite get it, they look at the rest of the band, and the best bands are going, whoa, just like what we lived in, where someone's going, oh my God, look what he's doing. Oh my,
yeah,
and it's love. They see,
yeah.
they go, I love this guy, and he's like half laughing. Oh my God, I'm in the zone. I'm in the
Mm.
zone. And the thing is, that is saleable, but you have to let go of the album. You have to let go of everything and embrace this.
Yeah.
I know I've got it. I'm selling albums. I'm putting out concerts. I'm doing it. And I was just scrapped playing on real albums. I scrapped being in bands and I'm doing my thing. And there's other people doing this as well. And
Yeah,
I think
that's
that's
yeah.
that's where the real musicians will reside. I think they will find a place there.
Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say to you. I think that's what you're doing, which is so brilliant. You and several others. I think this is the way our community is going to survive. I've been telling all my mates that, I was going to do this, my close friends, and they're like, oh, that's fantastic. And I was like, I think what Andy's trying to create here, or what he's on the cusp of, is part of, is exactly that. Yeah, we're doing it through the medium of Zoom and the internet, but we will probably get together. I hope we do get together
Yeah,
and
I
have
mean, this is why I've taken
a,
the risk of taking that big studio, and I got space. I could put an orchestra
yeah.
in there if I wanted. On
Ah,
what's very interested in that you, who has been on the cutting edge of got this career, you're talking to me now. What's going to be happening in a couple of years' time? I'm so excited about this. I'm one of the few musicians that's going. I mean, Dominic knows Sting. You know Sting. Sting might be on tour one day. Think I'm going to go down to Andy's, and what I'd want Sting to do is not play his hits, not do anything proper. I just want to sit down with him, stick a bass in his hand, and just do what musicians do: chat
mm,
about stuff, play some songs, try some ideas out, and see if the magic happens. And this time, we don't have to be all stressed with the producer because the magic's not happening.
yeah,
We
yeah,
can
yeah,
talk about the magic not happening.
yeah.
So I'm talking to a jazz musician, who's an absolutely brilliant musician, and I said, "Why don't you come down and train me up to play with your band? Because I love jazz, but I've never had a chance to play jazz. I'm not as good as you, but I'm willing to learn. Do you want?" And they've said, "Oh, this is really good. I'd love to do this." So I
Oh,
can you imagine a TV show where Sting grabs some average players, sticks them in the room, and every day he turns up and he tries to turn them into a band that he's happy with, and that's documented. I tell you something, I'm watching that.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
Many would.
watching that,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
Sting would have to take away the he would have to take away that idea of how his songs work, because the songs are having a different role now. But I
Yeah,
believe that great art could come out of this,
yeah.
of actually going, let's just open it up. Let's reach in, see everyone as being equal, open your arms to the world. It's not us
That's
or
nice.
them.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not the Mount Olympus. It's the key thing that I've come up with here is this Mount Olympus. And I
Mm.
thought the other day, I want to try and get in touch with Stephen Fry because he knows about all this stuff. Because what happened
Amazing, man. Yeah,
why did we turn against those gods? The stories of Perseus and all these Odysseus and all these people is they turned away from the gods. They stopped doing what the gods were telling them to do. And so I'm starting to think, and I've just put this idea here right at the end of the video. It's a big esoteric idea that's come out
yeah,
of my channel. I think I'm onto something here. I think there is a powerful thing here of creative people moving to being more communal, more open, less like because I was very aware that there in the music industry, at the heart of it, with all these beautiful musicians who just were, like you said, just wanted to be in the zone and make music,
mm,
around that was this incredible thing that was about status. And that status was really powerful. And you could take your friend if I was on, like say I had a backstage pass with Black Sabbath or something, and you could say, I'm going to see Black Sabbath. I've got these, you say to your mate, and when they got there, they almost like corrupted by it. Do you know that thing? And they were going, oh, wow,
yeah,
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 oh
yeah,
my God, yeah. Oh, well, yeah, we don't have to go in the queue. We just go around, oh, right, really? Yes, yes. And we're going to meet the band. Oh, yeah, yeah. And when you can see them being corrupted by this
yeah.
because they've entered Mount Olympus in their minds.
That's a very good analogy. Yeah, yeah, totally.
And you'll know that so well,
Yeah,
of
I know exactly
and
where you're coming from. Yeah, yeah, totally.
because I got to the point when I was around that I used to try and avoid it. They used to go, oh, so and so's coming to the gig tonight. I thought, oh, I don't want to be around that because what we go, oh, it's not like just a normal person walking and you've got to go, oh, hello, nice meeting you. Yeah, yeah. And I just thought,
Mm.
and they don't want to do it. Everyone just wants to be normal. They just want a
Oh,
normal
very much
life.
so. Yeah, I mean that's as old as time. Is so many of the artists you're around. One that was, in fact, that's a really good point. Actually, maybe to sort of wrap up that part of it is the other thing is to kind of come in the room and make everyone feel relaxed. That's part of your job also, and not be starstruck, which happened. First time I met Sting, totally starstruck.
I wouldn't be able
Totally.
to talk to the bloke. Oh,
Yeah.
he's brilliant. I just what you do
He's
is
just
Sting.
incredible, and I'm there because of me and Dominic, and
Yeah.
there's a whole sketch with how that all happened, you know. But I handed him a cassette of a Gil Evans recording that my dad gave to him and said, "Hey, you should check this out. This is right up your street." He was very gracious. He sort of took it. I know he was looking at me going, "How old are you?" Because I was really young when I first worked with him. So yeah, and I was completely
But
starstruck.
Gil Evans was on his second solo album, wasn't he? On
Yeah,
Nothing Like the Sun, he actually did
yeah.
Little Wing, was it, with Sting or something?
Yeah, and
He
we
loves
did
Gil Evans.
Drive
Sting,
and
Sting does.
oh
He
yeah,
loves,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, he's just got an incredible eclectic sort of taste. I mean, just you just got to look at not only was I walking into the room with him, totally starstruck by him being a massive Police fan and everything, even though I'm a grown up now, even though I've done what I've done already, and I'm with my mate. I'm thinking Omar Hakim, I'm thinking Branford Marsalis, I'm thinking all of what went before, all my heroes, all the people
Mm.
I brought that in the room. It took a lot to kind of compose myself. Um,
I was chatting to a guy in America last night who he knows Omar. He's one of the guys. I think his house is gone.
Oh my God.
It's just this thing's a powerful thing, and I don't want anyone to think I was being facetious and joking about it when I say
No,
what
it's
I'm
no.
saying is that it's emblematic. It's a tragedy. People don't understand for musicians like of our age and what's going on. It's really depressing what's going on in the music industry for many. It's
Yeah,
really, really depressing.
yeah,
And I've been very depressed by it, but I do think there's a way through. I think people have to have faith in the future. And I'm pretty sure the new likes of Sting that they do that, they will still become superstars. But I think the superstars will be different. YouTube superstars are different to,
yeah,
Freddie Mercury. There's a because they're so much more touchable and approachable.
yeah. I think that's pretty cool. I mean, I know there's some majesty, black magic, mystery, excitement about the untouchable, the unknown. I get that. We get that. But you can have that on a day to day. You come in and you see a musician who you play an instrument you've never seen before. You just
Yeah, yeah.
there is a mystery. Just a little aside. I mean, it doesn't compare at all. But I have some experience with loss of stuff. Many who might see this that know me
Yeah.
many years ago, about 7, 8 years ago, I think it was now, I lost 90% of my gear in a fire. I had to re all a lot of what you're seeing around me. I had to, yeah, it was lost in a storage. I was about to move it, ironically, about 2 months from the time it happened, and it all went. And I lost something extraordinarily valuable to me, which was the congas that Dizzy Gillespie gave me when I was a kid, when I was 12. I lost them in a fire. So you can
Oh my God.
imagine the
Oh
tears I
my
shed.
God, Dizzy Gillespie. I
Yeah.
mean, because in the end, Dizzy Gillespie deciding in the 1940s to bring him, what was his name?
Channel puzzle.
Yeah, that's in terms of Western music and Western popular music, that's where it starts and ends, isn't it? That is it.
That's
Dizzy. Oh, Dizzy Gillespie. What a man.
yeah. Well, he was
What
a
a man. And people
he-
don't understand
yeah.
what these musicians did. They just don't
Oh,
understand it.
he's incredible. But talking about the loss and what you have to. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what these people are going through. But it's not just things; it's their homes, it's their place. And I've
Oh,
got to
it's
put.
it's awful. And what it is that I suppose part of it is you suddenly realise that for some people it's absolute disaster. For certain people, I mean, if you're Mel Gibson, his house. I mean, he was on Joe Rogan, sat there going, "I think my house is burning down," and laughing because, of course, he's probably got about eight.
Yeah, yeah,
It's but for musicians working in this climate at the moment, and I don't know, it's like you suddenly realise it's the reality of they're real people. It's like when I first started doing clinics and I was playing like Terry Bozzio and Simon Phillips and Cobham and all these people, and I'd meet these people. I was so in awe. These are more important to me than if I'd have met like Michael Jackson. Like my heroes were these drummers. But as soon as I met them, I realized because they were drummers and because they were musicians, we had a lot in common, and they were actually really easy to talk to because they also were equally in awe. Because I can remember doing this drum clinic with Jimmy Chamberlain from Smashing Pumpkins,
yeah.
and Terry Bozzio was there, and I was going, I want to see Terry Bozzio, and Jimmy Chamberlain was sat next to me. I wasn't talking to him because it's Jimmy Chamberlain. And then Jimmy goes, "Oh, I really want to see Terry Bozzio." And I went, "Do you want to see Terry Bozzio?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Should we ask Kenny Aranoff if we could see Terry Bozzio?" Because I was being touring with Kenny. That's why I was there. And Kenny's a
Wow,
hero. So I go up to
wow.
Kenny, and Kerry goes walking off for us. I'm trying to get Kenny Aranoff, and he comes, "Yeah, yeah, Terry will talk to you." And so me and Jimmy went in, and I'm sat there going, And me and Jimmy are chatting to Terry Bowes, and he's telling us all about learning the black page of Frank Zappa, all this bonkers stuff. And
Yeah.
then we walk out, and Jimmy turned around to me and went, I can't believe I just met Terry Bozzio. And I said, I can't believe I met Terry Bozzio with bloody Jimmy Chamberlain. It's like the whole, and I realised that these people, um, because Simon Phillips said it to me, he said that the baton's being passed down.
Mm,
And you have to respect it. He said the baton's being passed down, the music baton's being passed down, and
yeah.
it won't stop. I promise it's not going to stop there. It is there. It's just
I agree with that.
it's the old industry that's dying, but there will be an industry, and it will be a lot more to do with talking to people who play the instruments, which will be much better.
This is exactly what you're doing, and
Yeah.
that's how I feel inspired by what you're doing. I feel like there's a load of people you've interviewed that now I feel a little bit more brave, and I think like I would love to talk to Simon Phillips. You know, I'm such a fan. You know, he's an amazing musician, and I think I'm going to brave it now. With you know, many years ago, I would I'd love to talk to Blah. I'd love to meet so and so. I'd love to meet this person,
Well, if
but
I'll drag you in if you're up for it. Next time I got somebody like that, like a Paul Vertigo,
oh
or
my
you know,
God, Paul
I was
Vertigo,
thinking I
first
should have had
circle.
Miles on with Roland Vasquez because this you would have just been in heaven chatting to this bloke, and he was telling me all these stories, and I was,
Yeah,
why did they get rid of Manilow from Weather Report? And he was sort of saying what that was, which is just
oh
basically because the guy was so fiery and intense and nothing like a real positive guy, but a very spiritual guy, and it was just chemistry, you know, and but
yeah, chemistry. Yeah,
yeah, it's this is where we're going next. You know, I'm sat there now trying to reconnect with everyone I've spoken to the friends of the channel, because I'm
yeah,
getting like a gang of people. I'm getting a
brilliant.
gang of people. Roland Vasquez, when he's coming over, he wants to come down to my studio, and if he comes down, you're coming up because I need a conga player.
Yeah, I'm there, mate. Yeah.
You know, I'll get Jim Mullen down. I'll play guitar. Can you imagine? And this is,
Oh,
and the thing is that if I could start funding it, but I tell you where the money's going to come from. People out in the world now can pay what they can afford. And if they and I'm
yeah,
talking to the you know, you millionaires who watch this program, you got a ton of money, or not even millionaire, but you got a lot of money. Support the arts, and they want to. You know, that's
yeah, yeah. No,
they
there's a
want
lot of
to, and we
people.
just got to access it. And the rich people are going to have to support it. The poor
Yeah.
people have got to put their time in. You
Yeah.
know, the musicians have got to see and put the work in and play some great music and get it out there. And
Mm.
that means we've got to put our hearts on the line because the machines do it well. We've got to do what
Yeah.
the machine does not well, and that's like this is what I think. So I'm sorry I've bamboozled this your interview, but you're coming back. So everybody, this has been Mars Bold. He's part of the gang now. Are you part
I-
of the gang?
I'm so part of the game, man. Yeah, I'm
You think
so part.
Dominic's part of the gang? I don't. He's a bit. He's. I mean, I've been watching him play for 30 years. I am slightly intimidated by
Oh
Dominic.
no, he's awesome. Yeah,
He's,
yeah. No,
he's
he's cool, man. Yeah, he's cool. He's like my big brother. He's one of my closest friends in a way. Yeah, we've been through a lot together, but you know, conversation for
so he's part of the gang.
he's part. Yeah, I'll make sure he
You
is,
can
man.
make him part of the gang, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
I'll
I mean,
drag him.
I mean, God, my life's work will be done if I can do this. Not for my own ego, but if I can do this, that's my mate, Kev. Sorry about this, but I think that's God
I
telling
was
us that our
fearful my
time
phone
is
was
up.
going to go all the time, but it's all right. Yeah.
Miles, did you enjoy that? Was it all right?
That's amazing, mate. Yeah, it's lovely to talk to you. Yeah, I could listen to you all day. Honestly, it's fascinating. I mean, I probably rambled as well, but I think that's the
Yeah,
point, isn't
I
it?
did try and let you have a good ramble halfway through because
I
I am
know.
so fired up with what's going on at the moment musically,
Yeah, yeah,
and these interviews. It's like I feel like I'm trying to spread the word and get everybody on side and go. It's going to be okay, you know, because I could feel
yeah,
it in the industry because I had it for years.
yeah.
Because the college system was going down, they don't want to fund music courses. They don't want to have people doing music degrees. You know,
Mm.
the whole, and then the focus on creativity that's been waning. They don't know one values creativity anymore. Um, and so I have been very low, but now there's a way of reaching out to people. You've got to share the love. You've got to come on these channels and you've got to talk about it
Yeah,
and you know, you've got to engage
yeah,
and spread your love of the music. That's what you have to do. That's what we all have to do in the end.
yeah. Really, dare I say it? What else have we got? You know, I mean, that's okay. It's a thing I love, so you know, it keeps me wanting to wake up in the morning and try and keep creating those scenarios,
Yeah,
making
well,
music.
it's all going to be fine. It's all going to be
It's
fine.
all gonna be fine.
Yes, you have to place it. You ain't going to be fine while you don't think it's fine. But once you decide it's going to be fine, then
Yeah,
as
yeah. I
we
think, well,
said,
you
you
know, that they say that thing about if you just keep smiling, eventually you slightly change, change the shape of your face, and it lightens your mood. Just every morning look in the mirror and force that smile. I mean, repetition in anything, you can make it so you can choose how you feel about the day. You are in control of your emotions
you
when
are, yes,
with the
and that
emotions.
proves music proves that.
Yeah, it does
I
prove it.
am going to press the button to stop it. This is a 2 hour one. I did do a 3.5 hour chat the other day, which is a
Yeah,
world
this is long,
record.
man.
Yeah,
Sorry. Yeah.
this one's 2 hours. It's like they're very unwieldy, right? So at the end of it, we have to finish in that sort of 70s BBC, play school ending where we wave at the camera and say goodbye. So if I
Okay.
could just get my finger on the bye bye everybody, bye bye, bye bye, bye.